Chapter 296. The reason why Ling Shiqi said this was because regardless of whether it was a draw or a win for Gu San, Yun Mengsi would still participate. Ling Shiqi didn't want her to step down. Delta Orgi sensed Ling Shiqi's murderous intent and said, "I admit defeat." This, Yushu and the others looked at each other. Yun Mengsi was obviously cheating, but they couldn't say that Delta Orgi would win. Therefore, it wasn't unacceptable for this battle to be considered a draw. However, Delta Orgi admitted defeat, which confused Yushu and Hengming. As for Hateful Blade and the others, they remained silent. Since Delta Orgi admitted defeat, they could only accept it silently. Formless crossed his arms and looked like he was waiting to watch a good show. Ling Shiqi whispered to Delta Orgi, "Go and rest. Leave the rest to me." Delta Orgi didn't force herself this time and nodded obediently. After Delta Orgi left, Ling Shiqi's eyes turned colder and colder. He said, "I am Ling Shiqi. Please enlighten me." Yun Mengsi also thought that it would be best for her and Delta Orgi to end up in a draw. She wasn't confident that she could defeat Delta Orgi, but she also didn't think that she would lose. Therefore, when Delta Orgi admitted defeat, she couldn't help but be stunned. What surprised her more was that Ling Shiqi made this decision for Delta Orgi. Delta Orgi actually did this. What was their purpose in doing this? Yun Mengsi couldn't figure it out. However, when she saw Ling Shiqi's ice-cold gaze, she felt a chill in her heart that went straight to her soul. She vaguely understood what was going on. Ling Shiqi didn't hesitate at all. He raised his right arm and 36 demonic patterns appeared. After the spiritual pulse realm, one could condense 9 demonic patterns every time they broke through a realm. The 36 demonic patterns made Ling Shiqi feel like his arm was filled with explosive power. He stretched out his 5 fingers and his palm turned into a pitch-black demonic claw. In an instant, demonic aura rose around him and a demonic claw half the height of a human formed. Earth Fiend Demonic Claw. Yun Mengsi didn't dare to be distracted. She quickly formed a hand seal, and as her spirit energy flashed, flames and golden light flashed. The demonic claw tore the flames and shattered the golden light, but it also dissipated into nothingness. Ling Shiqi was also a spirit caster, so he naturally knew the weakness of spirit casters, which was that there was a short buffer period between spirit techniques. The reason he used the Earth Fiend Demon Shadow Claw was not to injure Yun Mengsi in the first place. Instead, it was to take advantage of this momentary gap. Before the claw shadow completely dissipated, Ling Shiqi punched out. The shadow of a ferocious tiger suddenly jumped out and pounced forward. Yun Mengsi didn't expect Ling Shiqi to attack so quickly. She didn't have time to form a hand seal. Mental energy surged between her eyebrows, and a green formation suddenly appeared in front of her. Layers upon layers of green light intertwined, like the roots of a towering tree overlapping with each other. The green light blocked the shadow of the tiger, but the internal energy within it went through the green light and attacked Yun Mengsi. Yun Mengsi immediately felt a huge force coming at her, but her clothes flashed with spirit light to dissolve the internal energy. She only took a few steps back. What shocked her was that Ling Shiqi had appeared beside her without her noticing. Ling Shiqi used his palm as a knife. In an instant, hundreds of knife auras shot out, killing everything in their path. Yun Mengsi still didn't have time to form a hand seal. She spat out another word. Boom! Something strange happened. The air seemed to vibrate rhythmically, shattering the knife auras one after another. Ling Shiqi's 3 consecutive attacks didn't yield any obvious results. The other 3 disciples of the Lyoha spiritual zone smiled. Only Elder Shao frowned more and more. In fact, Ling Shiqi was also a little surprised. Yun Mengsi was proficient in the Spirit Seal style, the Spirit Incantation style, and the Spirit Formation style. She was indeed a rare genius. But she had to pay the price today. Yun Mengsi had just shattered the knife auras when another 5 bloodlines shot out. Each bloodline was condensed to the extreme and aimed at her fatal spots. This was also the Blood Heavenly Finger, but it was performed by a Spirit Pulse Level 3 cultivator. It was the Blood Heavenly Finger of the Perfection stage. Ah! Yunmengsi suddenly screamed in the face of danger. Violent mental energy surged out. At this moment, she had no choice but to overdraw her mental energy. She didn't form a hand seal this time. Instead, the shadow of the palace appeared in the air again. But what she didn't know was that Ling Shiqi had been waiting for this moment. Ling Shiqi's eyes flickered with a strange light. One of his eyes was enough to shake people's hearts and souls. The other eye looked lifeless, but it contained the terror of life and death. He performed the soul-scaring technique and the mind-stealing technique at the same time. Originally, this level 3 illusory technique was almost useless against a spirit pulse realm cultivator like Yunmengsi. But Yunmengsi had already exhausted a lot of her mental energy in the fierce battle with the Delta Origi. Now, Ling Shiqi was forcing her to overdraw her mental energy. This way, although she could explode with powerful mental energy for a short period of time, she wouldn't be able to resist the illusory technique. The shadow of the palace above Yunmengsi's head had just taken shape, but it suddenly disappeared. Even Yunmengsi herself stood there in a daze, motionless. Ling Shiqi formed a sword with his fingers. Dozens of invisible channel unblocking sword auras shot out and pierced into Yunmengsi's body mercilessly. Not only did the channel unblocking sword auras leave wounds all over her body, but they also caused blood vessels to appear all over her body. More than half of the meridians in her body were sealed. This time, she was really in a situation where she was bound to lose. Seeing this scene, Elder Shao sighed inwardly. However, it was already very good that Yunmengsi could hold on until now. On the other hand, the other 3 people had yet to recover from Yunmengsi's sudden defeat. Just a moment ago, the 2 of them were still fighting back and forth. Seeing that Yunmengsi was about to explode, she suddenly froze. They had all subconsciously thought that Ling Shiqi was a martial artist, so they had overlooked the possibility of an illusory technique. However, to everyone's surprise, Ling Shiqi did not stop there. His eyes suddenly shone with a terrifying murderous intent. He struck out 6 palms and the 6 palms combined into one. Instantly, a huge palm of demonic flames came crashing down. There was only one ending for a defenseless martial artist when faced with such a palm, and that was death. Elder Shao was immediately enraged. "How dare you!" Just as he was about to intervene, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. It was Hateful Blade. "Elder Shao, the battle is not over yet. If you intervene, it will be equivalent to admitting defeat." Hateful Blade's sudden appearance shocked Elder Shao. He said in a low voice, "I admit defeat on behalf of Yunmengsi." Bang! However, Ling Shiqi's 6 solar poisonous fire palms still struck Yunmengsi's body. The boundless power of the palm and the sinister demonic flames engulfed her. Fortunately, she finally regained some consciousness at the last moment. Spiritual light flashed on her clothes continuously and blocked a portion of the power of the palm. Even so, she was still sent flying. Furthermore, the poisonous fire attacked her heart and she immediately spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. The scorching flames burned her clothes and seared her hair. She was in a pitiful state. After falling to the ground, she immediately fainted. At this moment, Ling Shiqi suddenly slapped his head regretfully and said, "Oh no, Elder Shao was a little slow. I did not stop in time." Chapter 297. Elder Shao's face was completely gloomy. He shouted in a low voice, "Is the Blood Garment Pavilion trying to ruin the bet this time?" The threat in his words was obvious. If Hen Dao hadn't stopped him just now, he could have saved Yunmengsi at any time. It was obvious that Hen Dao's actions were intentional. However, Hen Dao said, "The disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion have always followed the rules in the competition." Yunmengsi didn't admit defeat, so Ling Shiqi continued to attack. "No matter how you look at it, we are in the right." Elder Shao shook his head secretly. This was back to the matter of Yunmengsi being forced to use her protective trump card. The 6 Directions spiritual region was indeed in the wrong, and because of this, the Delta Origi was seriously injured. However, he was the one who brought Yunmengsi here. Now that she was in such a state, it would be difficult for him to report back. At this time, Wu Xiang cursed at Leng Shiqi, "You little bastard, how dare you be so heavy-handed to a disciple of the Six Directions spiritual region? She's a girl, why don't you know how to be gentle with her?" His voice was very loud, but there was no hint of blame in his tone. Leng Shiqi also said very cooperatively, "Elder Shao, fellow disciples of the Six Directions spiritual region, I'm not good enough," and didn't stop for a moment. "Please forgive me." Elder Shao knew that the Blood Garment Pavilion was giving him a way out. He also knew that the Six Directions spiritual region and the Blood Garment Pavilion joining forces was the region master's idea. As an elder, he actually didn't have much authority. In the end, he could only use silence to cover this matter. He didn't pay any attention to Leng Shiqi. Instead, he helped Yun Mengsi up and fed her a pill. Miraculously, Yun Mengsi woke up in an instant, and the fire poison in her body was also cleansed. After Yun Mengsi woke up, the first thing she looked at was Leng Shiqi, and the expression in her eyes was unusually complicated. Leng Shiqi didn't look at Yun Mengsi. Instead, he looked at the last youth. He was the person from the Six Directions spiritual region who hadn't made a move yet. As long as they defeated him, the Blood Garment Pavilion would win. This youth had a strong physique and a resolute face. His body was full of vitality, and it was obvious that he had also cultivated a body-refining technique. He walked over with a crimson spear in hand, his battle intent surging. Leng Shiqi's expression froze. He could feel that this was a formidable opponent. Six Directions spiritual region, Gongye Mingshu. As Gongye Mingshu stood there, his entire body seemed to have fused with the long spear. He didn't make any movements, but he gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. As Leng Shiqi had exposed many of his moves during the fight with Yun Mengsi just now, he decided to observe the situation and test Gongye Mingshu's actual strength first. Gongye Mingshu didn't hold back as well. He shook the spear in his hand, and there were actually traces of lightning flowing on it. After that, the lightning spear suddenly whipped over like a whip. Although this spear technique was a spear technique, there seemed to be a hint of a staff technique within it. It was extremely ferocious. Leng Shiqi took a deep breath. Using the spirit steps, he flew backward quickly, and at the same time, he unleashed a few frost sword energies to neutralize the wind generated by the spear. Bang! Gongye Mingshu stomped on the ground with one foot, and his body shot out like a sharp arrow that had left the bow. He thrust his spear forward, and the body of the spear blossomed with a crimson light. It smashed down from the sky like a red sun, and its imposing manner was extremely shocking. Leng Shiqi didn't dodge this time. The astral wood spirit spear appeared in his hand as well. Then, his eyes widened slightly, and his entire body emitted an imposing manner of charging into enemy lines alone. Charging into enemy lines would only lead to death. He thrust his spear forward like Gongye Mingshu, but the difference was that the tip of his spear drew out a huge cross of spirit light. The crimson sun was cut apart by the cross of spirit light, and the tips of the two spears collided with each other accurately. Instantly, an ear-piercing sound of collision was heard. Then, an invisible force spread out from the tip of the spear, and it stirred up gusts of wind. Leng Shiqi immediately felt an enormous force pass from the body of the spear to his arm, and it shook him to the point that the web between his thumb and forefinger cracked, and his arm went numb. The strength of Gongye Mingshu's body was actually stronger than his. On the other hand, Gongye Mingshu retreated 2 steps, and he was even more shocked in his heart. After this attack, he could feel that his body was stronger than Leng Shiqi's, and his spirit spear was better than Leng Shiqi's. His spirit techniques weren't inferior to Leng Shiqi's either. However, while he retreated 2 steps, Leng Shiqi didn't retreat. He was actually at a disadvantage in this attack. He found it hard to understand. He also somewhat understood the difficulties of Xiao Fu and Wan Ruei. However, Elder Xiao saw through the reason behind this. It was because Leng Shiqi's spear thrust was filled with the will to die, and Gongye Mingshu had always treated this as a competition. Unknowingly, his imposing manner had already fallen to a disadvantage. Not only him, but the 3 people from before were also the same. However, Elder Xiao didn't have any intention of blaming them. He also knew that this had always been the drawback of the Lyoha spiritual region's disciples. In fact, their disciples didn't lack battle experience, and they would often spar and compete with each other. However, the blood-clothing pavilion's disciples had all climbed out of a sea of blood and piles of corpses. Facing such an opponent, Gongye Mingxiu and the others' biggest weakness was that they didn't have the experience of fighting with their lives on the line. When Wu Xiang saw Leng Shiqi's spear, he muttered with satisfaction, "He's improved a little." After his attack failed, Gongye Mingxiu let out a low roar and began a frenzied attack. Every thrust of his spear was wide open, and the spear was filled with flames and traces of lightning. Its power was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, Leng Shiqi was forced to retreat again and again. Under the sky full of spear shadows, Leng Shiqi was like a small boat in a huge wave, and could capsize at any time. Leng Shiqi naturally couldn't continue like this. Then, he unsheathed his inky jade sword, and his sword swept out like a river. Streaks of dark green sword light and spear shadows constantly clashed, and countless sparks were created. It was even more dazzling. All of a sudden, Leng Shiqi's sword style changed. It became soft and gentle like a gentle breeze brushing the willows. The two completely opposite sword styles were instantly switched in his hands, causing Gongye Mingxiu, who had already adapted to Leng Shiqi's attack rhythm, to have an unusual feeling of suffocation. However, his reaction wasn't slow either. His spear style also changed, and became like a long whip. However, Leng Shiqi's sword style changed again. Sometimes it was fierce, sometimes it was light, sometimes it was as fast as a rainbow, and sometimes it was as slow as a willow catkin. This was the great perfection of the 17 sword styles of Mount Song, and it was vividly displayed by Leng Shiqi with his 5th-level spirit sword. The constantly changing sword style made Gongye Mingxiu a little overwhelmed. Although he was also good at different spear styles, he certainly couldn't be as free and flexible as Leng Shiqi when switching between styles. Gradually, Leng Shiqi suppressed Gongye Mingxiu. Gongye Mingxiu knew that he couldn't continue like this. He swatted away Leng Shiqi's inky jade sword with his spear. Then, his expression turned serious, and he formed a mystical spirit seal with one hand. What was even stranger was that the spirit seal was actually imprinted on his own body. Immediately, blazing flames and tyrannical lightning surged around Gongye Mingxiu's body. He stood there safe and sound, like a Balrog or thunder god. Chapter 298. Gongye Mingxiu suddenly erupted with such a powerful aura, causing everyone to be slightly shocked. Xiao Fu said coldly, that Leng Shiqi can force senior brother Gongye to use the Crimson Thunder Insight. He's quite capable, but that's it. Wan Ruei added, that's right. Senior brother Gongye's cultivation is comparable to the middle stage of the spiritual pulse realm. Leng Shiqi will definitely lose. Only Yun Mengxi didn't speak. She knew that Leng Shiqi could use illusions to temporarily control her, a spirit caster. It was obvious that Leng Shiqi's mental strength was extremely powerful. Moreover, he was also good at illusions. She had to be careful. Unfortunately, before Gongye Mingxiu stepped forward, she hadn't completely woken up and forgot to remind him. If she said it now, it would be considered cheating again. Leng Shiqi's mind moved, and his body was instantly covered in a set of ferocious armor that looked like a giant demon. His aura suddenly soared to the middle stage of the spiritual pulse realm. He swung the black jade sword horizontally, and 36 demonic patterns appeared. A sword ray that combined the intent of sharpness and heaviness flashed past in an instant. Other than Wu Xiang and Delta Origi, everyone else showed varying degrees of surprise. Xiao Fu and Wan Ruei both widened their eyes. Leng Shiqi's current state was even stronger than Gongye Mingxiu's. They had just said that this wave was in the bag, and in the blink of an eye, such an unforeseen event had occurred. While they were shocked, they also felt ashamed to the point of being unable to show their faces. Yun Mengxi's eyes were not only filled with surprise, but also a bit of fear. If Leng Shiqi used this move during the battle with her, she would have lost long ago. Even a few Sky Origin Realm experts stared at Leng Shiqi's demonic beast blood rune armor, as if they wanted to figure it out. Old Blockhead transmitted his voice to Old Bones. Can you see anything mysterious about it? Wonderful. It contains blood chi, and demonic chi. How did he fuse these three completely different types of power together? There's the aura of the Bloody Slaughter 7 Fiend art here. Did this kid change the Bloody Slaughter 7 Fiend art? Very likely. This child is truly a genius. Our decision to let him live was correct. Meng Ming clenched his fists tightly. No one knew what he was thinking. As for Yushu, his mouth was wide open and his saliva was almost flowing out. He said, "So handsome." At this moment, a hint of worry appeared in Elder Xiao's eyes for the first time. On the other hand, Gongya Mingshu was the calmest of them all, because all of his thoughts were focused on how to defeat Ling Shiqi. Gongya Mingshu's figure moved. Intense flames and tyrannical thunderbolts soared into the sky before abruptly smashing down. Ling Shiqi swung his black jade sword, and more than 200 blue frosty sword chis surged in the sky, destroying the soaring flames and lightning. At the same time, a penetrating cold air and an incomparably hot wave of fire gushed out from his body at the same time. Ice and fire were two substances that naturally countered each other. But at this moment, in Ling Shiqi's hands, they actually fused together perfectly. The cold air and the flames intertwined together like a small tornado whistling out. In the 10 days before the battle, Ling Shiqi did not waste his time. His greatest gain was that under Wu Xiang's guidance, he was able to fuse Spirit Assault, Path of Ice and Spirit Assault, Bombardment of Flames together. It became a fire and ice tornado that was comparable to a 5th-level spiritual skill. Seeing this scene, Wu Xiang smiled proudly. When some people smiled, of course, there were also people who wanted to cry, such as Gongya Mingshu. How could he have expected that Ling Shiqi was such a powerful spiritual caster? Although the sudden loss of the Dream Cloud Silk had made him suspicious, he had never thought in this direction. But Gongya Mingshu was also stimulated with a trace of ruthlessness. His body suddenly arched strangely, but it looked strangely beautiful, as if all the muscles and strength in his body had been adjusted to a perfect state. Then, the flames and lightning around his body twisted and turned, gradually forming the shape of a dragon. And the spear was the dragon's head. Gongya Mingshu's body suddenly pounced, turning into a large dragon and red lightning, and directly collided with the fire and ice tornado. With a loud boom, huge airwaves exploded with flames, cold air, and thunderbolts. The area within a radius of dozens of meters was turned into a mess. The experts of the Blood Clothing Pavilion and Lioha Spiritual Region all retreated with their disciples. The flames dissipated, and a broken dragon appeared. The dragon spat out a spear tip that shone with dense spiritual light, and it instantly pierced through Ling Shiqi's figure. We won. Oh no. The disciples of both sides had completely opposite thoughts. However, Gongya Mingshu was stunned because he did not feel his body being pierced. In other words, the Ling Shiqi in front of him was a fake. Sure enough, Ling Shiqi's body suddenly burst like a bubble, and turned into gorgeous petals that gently fluttered. Gongya Mingshu looked up vigilantly. Unknowingly, countless petals were sprinkling down from the sky around him. It was like a rain of petals, beautiful and magnificent. At this moment, Gongya Mingshu was about to be intoxicated by this beautiful world of flowers, but he suddenly bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked and said in his heart, I was almost pulled into an illusion. Then, the countless petals rapidly spun, and then shot towards Gongya Mingshu. Each petal was actually a sword chi. However, there were real and fake sword chi, and it was impossible to guard against. Gongya Mingshu held his spear horizontally above his head, and all the spiritual energy in his body converged on the spear. Suddenly, flames rose, and lightning flashed. He wanted to use force to break the technique. However, when his attention was completely focused on the sky, dozens of Ling Shiqi suddenly appeared, and dozens of violent sword chi engulfed Gongya Mingshu. Gongya Mingshu turned pale with fright. Facing the sword chi that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, he felt a trace of the threat of death for the first time. This made him want to use his life-saving trump card, but if he did that, he would be able to resolve the current crisis, but he would also lose. At this moment, a huge palm blotted out the sky and instantly destroyed all the sword chi, and the sky was completely swept clean. It was Elder Shao. This time, Hateful Blade did not stop him. Because if Elder Shao made a move, it meant that Gongya Mingxiu had lost. At the same time, it also meant that the Six Directions spiritual region had lost. Gongya Mingxiu's face was gloomy. As one of the most outstanding disciples of the Six Directions spiritual region, he naturally had some pride in his heart. However, he had lost just like that, and he had lost in such a straightforward manner. What made him feel strange was that all the sword chi, as well as the illusions, had disappeared. Where had the Leng Shiqi gone? At this moment, a voice came from beneath Gongya Mingxiu's feet. Let's consider this my win. Chapter 299. 3 days later, Leng Shiqi finished refining the 9-melody spirit fusion pill given to him by the pavilion master. His cultivation had soared to the 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm. As long as his cultivation was high, the power of his spiritual skills would naturally increase. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Master Wu Xiang wants to see you. Got it. Leng Shiqi then stretched his muscles and bones. After cultivating for 3 days, his body was slightly stiff. After a short while, Leng Shiqi came to Wu Xiang's place. When Wu Xiang saw Leng Shiqi's 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm, he did not say anything. It was as if everything was within his expectations. Wu Xiang waved his hand and sprinkled a green light that enveloped the entire hall. Leng Shiqi felt that this should be some kind of isolation restriction. However, he was a little surprised that Wu Xiang Palace had to use such a method in the Blood Garment Pavilion. Then, what Wu Xiang was going to say next must be of great importance. Wu Xiang also put away his unreliable appearance and said solemnly, Leng Shiqi, what I'm going to say next is of great importance. Besides you and me, only the pavilion master knows about this. In this world, I don't want a 4th person to know about this. Leng Shiqi's heart trembled. What was it that even the 2 pavilion masters, the deputy pavilion master and the disciplinary elder could not know about it? He said solemnly, I'll keep that in mind. 3 days ago, you defeated the 6 Directions spiritual region in a battle. At the same time, the Blood Garment Pavilion also received the support of the 6 Directions spiritual region. Then, the next step of the plan can be carried out. That is the Blood Seed Plan after the Blood Fog Island Plan. Blood Seed Plan? Leng Shiqi was confused, but he did not ask any questions. Wu Xiang continued, the Blood Seed Plan was originally expected to start in a few years. However, you and Delta Origi have broken through to the spiritual pulse realm one after another and have the ability to protect yourself, so the Blood Seed Plan started in advance. This plan is also an extremely important part of changing the future of the Blood Garment Pavilion. You are the first seed. Do you still remember that I once said that the Blood Garment Pavilion didn't nurture the 4 of you to be assassins? If it was just this, it would never be able to change the situation of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Take a look at this. At this point, Wu Xiang suddenly took out a huge box from his mustard seed bag. That box was more than half a zhang long and half a zhang tall. What is this? Leng Shiqi asked curiously. Wu Xiang said, you can open it and take a look. Leng Shiqi opened the box. There was a faint musty smell, as if the things inside had been there for a long time. When he opened it, all he saw was a bunch of messy things. This included rattles, strange black rods, children's tattered clothes. There were even a few spiritual artifacts and techniques. It could be said that everything was there. However, these things were all very old. On one side of the box, there were several stacks of thick books. Some were old, some were new, and the newest one seemed to have been bound not long ago. Seeing these things, Leng Shiqi was even more confused. What are these? At this moment, Wu Xiang's voice sounded, these are all your things. Leng Shiqi said in surprise, what? My things? His mind raced. He suddenly remembered that he had no memory of this body before he was 10 years old. Could these things be related to the original owner of this body? Wu Xiang's tone changed again. To be precise, these are the things of the other you. They are also the traces of the other you being alive. The other me? Ling Shiqi seemed to have vaguely grasped something. He seemed to have experienced this scene before. He remembered. Before he entered the illusory spirit's secret realm, Feng Shamo had found him and said that he would arrange a new identity for him, which was the identity of Zhuochuyu. At that time, Feng Shamo had given him some things to hide his identity, including Zhuochuyu's life records. He could not help but think to himself, is Wu Xiang, or the Blood Garment Pavilion, also arranging a new identity for me? From today onwards, you are not only the Blood Garment Assassin of the Blood Garment Pavilion, Ling Shiqi. You are no longer just an assassin. You will appear in the world with another identity. We call it birth. Wu Xiang's words confirmed Ling Shiqi's thoughts. He thought to himself that it was indeed so. The sect has already prepared a perfect identity for you. No matter who comes to investigate you, they will not reveal any flaws. Now, you have a choice. After you birth, it is best to join two forces. It can also be said that you are two completely different branches of the same force. That is, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. Discipline Commission, Dark Thunder Guards. Ling Shiqi was shocked. Of course, he knew these two names. He had even killed Chu Xinran, who was a Dark Thunder Guard. Regardless of whether it was the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards, they were directly under the jurisdiction of the Thunderblaze dynasty's royal family. However, they were mainly responsible for different things. The Discipline Commission was like the Thunderblaze dynasty's claws and teeth. It was responsible for handling the conflicts between the dynasty's forces and the spirit cultivator sections. Discipline meant that if they could suppress it, then they would suppress it. If they could not suppress it, then they would appease it. However, the authority of the discipline department differed greatly from province to province. For example, in the Muchen County and Donglin County, where there were top forces, the Discipline Commission existed in name only. This was because they did not have the ability to suppress the Blood Robe Pavilion or the Mountain Sea sect. However, in other counties, they might have monstrous authority and power. As for the people of the Discipline Commission, they had never been liked by the people of the leading sections. Even rogue cultivators looked down on them. Their reputation was extremely bad. As for the Dark Thunder Guards, they were the hidden fangs of the Thunderblaze dynasty. The fundamental purpose of the Dark Thunder Guards was to eliminate all people, things, and things that affected the stability of the dynasty. From supervising the royal family, civil and military officials, to eliminating spirit cultivators who caused trouble, they were all under their jurisdiction. For example, Wu Yuanho was secretly investigated by the Dark Thunder Guards and found evidence of him secretly manufacturing weapons, leading to the execution of Wu Yuanho's entire family. For example, the black-veiled woman that Ling Shiqi met in the illusory spirit's secret realm was to investigate the 5 devil cultivators who caused trouble. No matter where the Dark Thunder Guards were, they had a lot of power. Even the lowest-level Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion. That meant that they could ignore the laws of the Thunderblaze dynasty and directly act first and report later. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the people of the dynasty. And now, Wu Xiang actually asked Ling Shiqi to choose one of them. Ling Shiqi had already vaguely guessed what the Blood Robe Pavilion wanted to do. They were clearly asking him to be a spy. However, the Discipline Commission had become enemies with the spirit cultivators of the world. The Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the various forces of the dynasty. Neither of these were good places to go. If he had to choose between the two, Ling Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but he was still more willing to choose the Dark Thunder Guards. Perhaps it was because he was used to walking in the dark that he would be more proficient in doing things in the dark. Moreover, the Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion, which also gave him some initiative. Thus, he said, "Disciple is willing to go to the Dark Thunder Guards." Wu Xiang nodded and said, "Yes, I will arrange this matter for you as soon as possible." Take these things back and take a good look. Be sure to memorize every word and sentence. Disciple understands. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said. Then, he casually opened a page of the book, but there was a name that he would never have dreamed of, Lu Xingji. Chapter 300. 3 days later, Leng Shiqi finished refining the 9-melody spirit fusion pill given to him by the pavilion master. His cultivation had soared to the 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm. As long as his cultivation was high, the power of his spiritual skills would naturally increase. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Master Wu Xiang wants to see you. Got it. Leng Shiqi then stretched his muscles and bones. After cultivating for 3 days, his body was slightly stiff. After a short while, Leng Shiqi came to Wu Xiang's place. When Wu Xiang saw Leng Shiqi's 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm, he did not say anything. It was as if everything was within his expectations. Wu Xiang waved his hand and sprinkled a green light that enveloped the entire hall. Leng Shiqi felt that this should be some kind of isolation restriction. However, he was a little surprised that Wu Xiang Palace had to use such a method in the Blood Garment Pavilion. Then, what Wu Xiang was going to say next must be of great importance. Wu Xiang also put away his unreliable appearance and said solemnly, Leng Shiqi, what I'm going to say next is of great importance. Besides you and me, only the pavilion master knows about this. In this world, I don't want a 4th person to know about this. Leng Shiqi's heart trembled. What was it that even the 2 pavilion masters, the deputy pavilion master and the disciplinary elder could not know about it? He said solemnly, I'll keep that in mind. 3 days ago, you defeated the 6 Directions spiritual region in a battle. At the same time, the Blood Garment Pavilion also received the support of the 6 Directions spiritual region. Then, the next step of the plan can be carried out. That is the Blood Seed Plan after the Blood Fog Island Plan. Blood Seed Plan? Leng Shiqi was confused, but he did not ask any questions. Wu Xiang continued, the Blood Seed Plan was originally expected to start in a few years. However, you and Delta Origi have broken through to the spiritual pulse realm one after another and have the ability to protect yourself, so the Blood Seed Plan started in advance. This plan is also an extremely important part of changing the future of the Blood Garment Pavilion. You are the first seed. Do you still remember that I once said that the Blood Garment Pavilion didn't nurture the 4 of you to be assassins? If it was just this, it would never be able to change the situation of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Take a look at this. At this point, Wu Xiang suddenly took out a huge box from his mustard seed bag. That box was more than half a zhang long and half a zhang tall. What is this? Leng Shiqi asked curiously. Wu Xiang said, you can open it and take a look. Leng Shiqi opened the box. There was a faint musty smell, as if the things inside had been there for a long time. When he opened it, all he saw was a bunch of messy things. This included rattles, strange black rods, children's tattered clothes. There were even a few spiritual artifacts and techniques. It could be said that everything was there. However, these things were all very old. On one side of the box, there were several stacks of thick books. Some were old, some were new, and the newest one seemed to have been bound not long ago. Seeing these things, Leng Shiqi was even more confused. What are these? At this time, Wu Xiang's voice sounded. These are all your things. Leng Shiqi was surprised. What? My things? His mind raced. He suddenly remembered that he had no memory of this body before he was 10 years old. Could these things be related to the original owner of this body? Wu Xiang's tone changed again. To be precise, these are the things of the other you. They are also the traces of the other you being alive. The other me? Leng Shiqi seemed to have vaguely grasped something. He seemed to have experienced this scene before. He remembered. Before he entered the illusory spirit's secret realm, Feng Shamo had found him and said that he would arrange a new identity for him, which was the identity of Zhuo Qiuyu. At that time, Feng Shamo had given him some things to hide his identity, including Zhuo Chuyu's life records. He could not help but think to himself, is Wu Xiang, or the Blood Garment Pavilion, also arranging a new identity for me? From today onwards, you are not only the Blood Garment Assassin of the Blood Garment Pavilion, Leng Shiqi. You are no longer just an assassin. You will appear in the world with another identity. We call it birth. Wu Xiang's words confirmed Leng Shiqi's thoughts. He thought to himself that it was indeed so. The sect has already prepared a perfect identity for you. No matter who comes to investigate you, they will not reveal any flaws. Now, you have a choice. After you birth, it is best to join two forces. It can also be said that you are two completely different branches of the same force. That is, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. Discipline Commission, Dark Thunder Guards. Leng Shiqi was shocked. Of course, he knew these two names. He had even killed Chu Xinran, who was a Dark Thunder Guard. Regardless of whether it was the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards, they were directly under the jurisdiction of the Thunderblaze dynasty's royal family. However, they were mainly responsible for different things. The Discipline Commission was like the claws and teeth of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It dealt with the conflicts between the dynasty's forces and the spirit cultivator sections. Discipline meant that if it could be suppressed, then it would be suppressed. If it could not be suppressed, then it would be appeased. However, the authority of the discipline department differed greatly from province to province. For example, in the Muchen County and Donglin County, where there were top forces, the Discipline Commission existed in name only. This was because they did not have the ability to suppress the Blood Robe Pavilion or the Mountain Sea sect. However, in other counties, they might have monstrous authority and power. As for the people of the Discipline Commission, they had never been liked by the people of the leading sections. Even rogue cultivators looked down on them. Their reputation was extremely bad. As for the Dark Thunder Guards, they were the hidden fangs of the Thunderblaze dynasty. The fundamental purpose of the Dark Thunder Guards was to eliminate all people, things, and things that affected the stability of the dynasty. From supervising the royal family, civil and military officials, to eliminating the spirit cultivators who caused trouble, they were all under their jurisdiction. For example, Wu Yuanho was secretly investigated by the Dark Thunder Guards and found evidence of him secretly manufacturing weapons, leading to the execution of Wu Yuanho's entire family. For example, the black-veiled woman that Leng Shiqi met in the illusory spirit's secret realm was to investigate the 5 devil cultivators who caused trouble. No matter where the Dark Thunder Guards were, they had a lot of power. Even the lowest-level Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion. That meant that they could ignore the laws of the Thunderblaze dynasty and directly act first and report later. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the people of the dynasty. And now, Wu Xiang actually asked Leng Shiqi to choose one of them. Leng Shiqi had already vaguely guessed what the Blood Robe Pavilion was going to do. They were clearly asking him to be a spy. However, the Discipline Commission was on bad terms with the spirit cultivators of the world. The Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the various forces of the dynasty. Neither of these were good places to go. If he had to choose between the two, Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but he was still more willing to choose the Dark Thunder Guards. Perhaps it was because he was used to walking in the dark that he would be more proficient in doing things in the dark. Moreover, the Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion, which also gave him some initiative. Thus, he said, "Disciple is willing to go to the Dark Thunder Guards." Wu Xiang nodded and said, "Yes, I will arrange this for you as soon as possible. Take these things back and take a good look. Be sure to memorize every word and sentence." Disciple understands. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said. Then, he casually opened a page of the book, but there was a name that he would never have dreamed of, Lu Xingji. Chapter 301. At night, Leng Shiqi locked himself in a secret room in his room. He carefully read through everything about Lu Xingji. In this information, from the day Lu Xingji was born, it recorded in detail all the people and things he had come in contact with. When Lu Xingji was 12 years old, he was accepted as a disciple by a wandering spirit cultivator and went to travel around. The strange thing was, when Leng Shiqi looked at these things, he actually had a feeling that he had experienced them before. This kind of feeling actually made him shudder. He began to suspect that these things, were they things that this body had experienced before? In other words, this Lu Xingji was actually him. Leng Shiqi formed a guess in his mind. Lu Xingji was a native of this world. Before the age of 12, he grew up happily like an ordinary child. But when he was 12 years old, he was discovered to have a high cultivation talent and was thrown into the Blood Fog Island. Lu Xingji died not long after in the Blood Fog Island and was replaced by another Lu Xingji who came from another world, which was the current Leng Shiqi. The more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more he felt that this was very likely, and it seemed very reasonable. But Leng Shiqi thought of another illogical existence. If it was really as he guessed, and the information given by Wu Xiang was the original experience of this body, then why was there a need to prepare so well? These were originally the memories of Lu Xingji. Why was there a need to prepare detailed information about what happened every day? Moreover, it was impossible for a person to remember everything that happened when they were young. This would make it seem like there were many traces left behind. This made Leng Shiqi's heart beat like a drum, and he was a little unable to confirm his initial speculation. He racked his brains for a long time, but still could not find the most reasonable explanation. In the end, he could only bury all of this in his heart and wait for the opportunity to inquire about it in the future. Next, he continued to absorb the explosive amount of information about Lu Xingji. Even with his strong mental strength, it took him until the 4th day to completely remember Lu Xingji's life. At this time, he also found a loophole in the information. That was, according to the information, Lu Xingji became a disciple of a spirit cultivator when he was 12 years old. That spirit cultivator was called Chu Hezheng, a powerful rogue cultivator in the realm of unity of heaven and man. However, Leng Shiqi did not know Chu Hezheng at all, let alone being Chu Hezheng's disciple. He should have some inheritance, right? He did not have any at all. Another point was that the information in the information was that Lu Xingji's information, which was very much at the age of his age. But since it was perfect information's information, there must have been some kind of arrangement. Coincidentally, Wu Xiang had actually come looking for him at this moment. The strange thing was that Wu Xiang had actually appeared directly in his private room. He clasped his hands, clasped his clasped hands, clasped his hands clasped, disciples discipled, Gren, asked, Shiqi's in, every word has been engraved in disciple's mind. Leng Shiqi said confidently. Very good, master will take you to a place. Shiqi said as he grabbed Leng Shiqi's arm. Leng Shiqi felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, in the next moment, the scenery around him suddenly changed, and his eyes spun. When he finally stepped on the ground, he was already in an abnormally dark room. This darkness was nothing to a spirit pulse realm cultivator, and he could see clearly with his spirit energy. He immediately saw that there was an abnormally complex spirit array in the room. At this moment, he and Shiqi were standing in the middle of the array. Shiqi waved his hand and hundreds of sparkling and translucent spirit stones fell precisely into the grooves around the array. Leng Shiqi looked at the abnormally dense spirit stones, and his heart trembled. Every spirit stone was actually a middle-grade spirit stone. Every middle-grade spirit stone's value was more than 100 times that of a normal spirit stone. Wu Xiang was throwing money away. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but ask, Master, where are we? Shiqi said proudly, this is an inter-province teleportation formation. There are only a few in the entire Thunderfire dynasty, and our Blood Garment Pavilion has one. Inter-province teleportation formation? Although Leng Shiqi didn't know how far the teleportation formation could go, he knew that they would be going to a very far place. Wu Xiang explained, next, we'll go to the place where you'll join the Dark Thunder Guards. We'll erase your identity as a member of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. We'll have to choose a place very far away from Mukon County. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi nodded lightly. Soon after, mysterious spirit arrays lit up in the array, and the two of them gradually disappeared. The 6 kingdoms of the western regions were small countries sandwiched between the Thunderfire dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. Among the 6 kingdoms, the largest was only about the size of 2 provinces in the Thunderfire dynasty. The smallest was not even half the size of a province. The reason why the 6 kingdoms still existed was because they were equivalent to a buffer zone between the Thunderfire dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. No matter which side wanted to send troops, they had to first cross the 6 kingdoms of the western regions. This way, the other side would naturally have enough time to react. The Western Desolation County was the westernmost province of the Thunderfire dynasty. It also bordered the Zhu Lu Kingdom and the Gaoji Kingdom of the 6 kingdoms of the western regions. Although the Western Desolation County had the word desolation in its name, it wasn't actually desolate. On the contrary, it was abnormally prosperous. Because the Thunderfire dynasty accepted all kinds of people, they didn't reject the 6 kingdoms of the western regions and even vigorously promoted all kinds of trade. Therefore, a large number of merchants from the 6 kingdoms of the western regions could be seen coming and going in the Western Desolation County. It was extraordinarily lively. On this day, 2 guests came to the capital of the Western Desolation County, Western Desolation City. One of them was a slightly plump middle-aged man. His face was very ordinary, but he had a small mustache and wore a small red round hat on his head. He looked a little funny. But absolutely no one would have thought that this funny-looking man was actually the famous Nether Blood Cloak assassin of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Wu Xiang. So, the one beside him was naturally Ling Shiqi. But at this moment, Ling Shiqi was showing his original appearance, but also not his original appearance. According to Wu Xiang, Ling Shiqi's true appearance was too young and didn't match his cultivation. Using external objects to change one's appearance could fool ordinary people, but those true experts would still see through it. At that time, trying to cover it up would only make it more conspicuous. So, Ling Shiqi's current appearance was because he had taken a strange pill similar to hormones, which caused his body to develop ahead of time. He also grew a mustache and looked like a strong man around 30 years old. The 2 of them had directly crossed several provinces and counties from the Mukan County to the Western Desolation County through the Interprovince Transportation Formation. As it turned out, Wu Xiang wanted Ling Shiqi to join the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Desolation County. And the reason why he was able to arrange for Ling Shiqi to join was because he had a close relationship with the inspector of the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Desolation County. No, to be more precise, Lu Xingji's master, Chu Hezheng, had a close relationship with the inspector of the Western Desolation County, Yu Ruifeng. Wu Xiang was Chu Hezheng. Chapter 302. The Western Wilderness City was a city with a large flow of people, and people from the western regions could be seen everywhere. However, there was a very wide but desolate street in the Western Wilderness City. The reason was that the Dark Thunder Mansion was located in the street. This was the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. The Dark Thunder Guards were notorious in the imperial court. Many high officials and nobles avoided them, so this street was deserted. Ling Shiqi followed Wu Xiang to the gate of the Dark Thunder Mansion. Wu Xiang handed over a name card, and soon a group of 5 people came out to welcome them. The leader was an old man with sharp eyes. He was not young, but there was still a trace of sharpness in his body. He was the inspector of the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Wilderness Prefecture, Yu Ruifeng, who had the cultivation of oneness of heaven and men. He was responsible for patrolling the entire Western Wilderness Prefecture, and was a real figure with real power. The 4 people behind him were also in Gang's spirit realm. They were the inspectors in charge of monitoring the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Yu Ruifeng greeted them with a smile. "Brother Chu, long time no see. Please come in." Wu Xiang, who was Chu Hezheng, said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite with me. Please come in." Seeing Ling Shiqi, Yu Ruifeng said, "Oh? This little brother must be Brother Chu's disciple Lu Xingji." "Huh, it's my disciple Lu Xingji. Why don't you greet the seniors?" Wu Xiang said to Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi immediately cupped his hands and said, "Junior Lu Xingji greets Marshal Uncle Yu and seniors." Yu Ruifeng and the others stared at Ling Shiqi for a few seconds, and then he exclaimed, "Nephew, you have the cultivation of middle-stage spiritual pulse realm at such a young age. It's true that a famous teacher produces a brilliant disciple." Ha ha ha. Wu Xiang laughed and said, "It's not worth mentioning. My disciple still has a lot to learn." Hearing this, Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed with a trace of shrewdness, and he said with a smile, "Brother Chu, nephew, let's talk in the hall." They chatted and laughed as they walked into the hall. Leng Shiqi followed them silently. Everyone took their seats and chatted for a while. Leng Shiqi found that Yu Ruifeng didn't seem to be pretending to smile at Wu Xiang, but was really enthusiastic. Wu Xiang saw that the small talk was almost over, so he began to talk about the main topic. "Brother Yu, I'm ashamed to say this, but I actually have a request for you this time." Yu Ruifeng didn't look surprised. He had already guessed what was going on the moment he saw Leng Shiqi. "Brother Chu, what are you talking about? If there's anything you want, just say it. As long as it's within my power, I'll definitely agree." Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. He didn't know what kind of magic potion Yu Ruifeng had fed him, but he agreed without even hearing the request. "This matter is related to my good-for-nothing disciple." Wu Xiang pointed at Leng Shiqi and said, "My disciple's cultivation is barely passable, but he still lacks a lot of training. I came this time to find an opportunity for him to gain experience." He came to find an opportunity to gain experience, but he came to the Dark Thunder Guard. The meaning of Wu Xiang's words was very obvious. At this time, the eyes of the 4 inspectors flashed. The Dark Thunder Guard was not a place that anyone could enter casually. The Dark Thunder Guard's duty was to monitor the world, so the most basic requirement to enter the Dark Thunder Guard was to have a clean background. Even your 3 generations of ancestors will be thoroughly investigated. Anyone who has the slightest bit of criminal past will not be allowed to enter. It didn't matter how good your talent was or how high your cultivation was. The first requirement of the Dark Thunder Guard was to be completely loyal to the royal family. Wu Xiang's request could be said to be easy, but it could also be said to be difficult. The main thing was to see if Lu Xingji's identity was clean enough. If his background was clean, it didn't matter if he did a favor. If there were some traces of his background, it wouldn't be easy to handle. However, what the 4 inspectors didn't expect was that Yu Ruifeng would agree to it so easily. He said, "I thought it was something important. Brother Chu came in person for such a small matter? Actually, you only need to send a letter." The 4 inspectors were all shrewd people, but at this time, they couldn't help showing traces of shock. In their impression, Yu Ruifeng was an extremely strict person. How could he agree to Chu Hezheng's request so easily? Letting Leng Shiqi enter the Dark Thunder Guard without asking or investigating was against the rules of the Dark Thunder Guard. It was also inconsistent with Yu Ruifeng's usual style. What was the relationship between Yu Ruifeng and Chu Hezheng? It wasn't just them, even Leng Shiqi thought the same. Wu Xiang said, "I won't make things difficult for Brother Yu. Brother Yu can investigate my disciple's background as you wish. I won't break the rules of the Dark Thunder Guard." Yu Ruifeng said with a smile, "Let's not talk about this for now. I see that nephew has the cultivation of the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. It's a bit of a waste of talent to just be a Dark Thunder Guard. By the way, do you have any empty inspectors under your rule?" The 4 inspectors almost sprained their tongues. They began to wonder if Yu Ruifeng had said something wrong. Inspector? That was a position that only the Spirit Aperture realm had the qualifications to hold. Not only did the cultivation have to be high enough, but they also had to have the corresponding ability and experience. Hearing Yu Ruifeng's words, he wanted Lu Xingji to directly be an inspector. One of them said carefully, "Lord Yu, nephew Lu has such a cultivation at such a young age. It's amazing. However, if he becomes an inspector with the cultivation of the Spirit Pulse realm, I'm afraid there will be people who won't accept it." Yu Ruifeng glanced at him and said coldly, "Duan Chun, are you questioning my decision?" Duan Chun immediately stood up and said, "This subordinate doesn't dare." "Humph, didn't your North County lose a supervisor not long ago? Why don't you let nephew Lu replace him?" Yu Ruifeng's tone was normal this time, but there was an unquestionable meaning in it. This subordinate understands. This subordinate will go prepare the transfer order. Duan Chun said and left. Yu Ruifeng turned to Wu Xiang and said, Brother Chu, are you satisfied? Wu Xiang said happily, Brother Yu is too serious. It's good enough that my disciple has a chance to gain experience. I'm afraid he won't be able to take up the position of inspector. I see that nephew Lu isn't a fish in a pond. A mere inspector is nothing. Xingji, why aren't you thanking Marshal Uncle Yu? Leng Shiqi was just about to stand up when Yu Ruifeng pressed his hand down. A gentle force pressed him back down. Yu Ruifeng said, Brother Chu, you're being too polite. It's not worth mentioning. By the way, tonight we brothers won't go home until we're drunk. Okay, we won't go home until we're drunk. Late at night, Leng Shiqi supported the drunk Wu Xiang back to the room Yu Ruifeng arranged for them. As soon as they entered the room, Wu Xiang raised his hand and set up an isolation restriction. He didn't look drunk at all. Chapter 303. Leng Shiqi saw that Wu Xiang's expression wasn't good and had many questions. For example, what was the relationship between Wu Xiang and Yu Ruifeng? But he didn't ask. If he could find out, Wu Xiang would naturally tell him. Wu Xiang said calmly, Originally, with your cultivation, you were the most suitable person to be the Dark Lightning envoy. Even if you came in through the back door, others wouldn't say anything. But Yu Ruifeng directly arranged for you to be the supervisor. The supervisor is a position with real power. Even normal spirit aperture realm cultivators may not have the qualifications to take up this position. He wants to push you into the teeth of the storm. Once you can't hold this position, you won't be able to stay in the Dark Lightning Guards. This way, he has returned my favor and didn't break the rules of the Dark Lightning Guards. His move of retreating in order to advance is really brilliant. At this point, Wu Xiang changed the topic, but he definitely didn't expect you to be able to sit in this position. You also have to sit tight. Leng Shiqi knew that this matter was of great importance. Since he had already chosen the Dark Lightning Guards, he could only follow this path to the end. Even if taking over the supervisor position would bring him endless pressure and trouble, he had to endure it. Disciple understands. Seeing Leng Shiqi's attitude, Wu Xiang nodded his head in satisfaction. Yu Ruifeng will definitely investigate your background, and he will even turn it upside down. But you don't have to worry, he won't find anything. Tomorrow, you can take the transfer order and take up the position. Master believes in your ability and will of course support you. Take this first. Wu Xiang took out a mustard seed bag and gave it to Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi used his mental power to check it and was immediately stunned. This mustard seed bag was filled with cultivation resources. Just the third transformation spirit pills alone had a total of 30 pills, each of which was worth several hundred spirit stones. In addition, there were 5,000 spirit stones and all kinds of pills that spirit aperture realm cultivators could use. And what made Leng Shiqi the most happy was that there were cultivation methods and spiritual skills inside. The cultivation method was called Amorphous Truth, and was a rank 4 cultivation method. Their spiritual skills were only at the 3rd level, but there were many of them. Sword techniques, saber techniques, finger techniques, leg techniques, staff techniques. This included 18 types of weapons and all types of spiritual techniques. There were even spiritual techniques and illusions. In total, there were over 23rd stage spiritual skills. Leng Shiqi secretly swallowed his saliva. He had never seen so many spiritual techniques in front of him, and all of them were real. He actually felt like he had made a windfall. Wu Xiang said, since you're Chu Hejing's disciple, your techniques should have some traces of your master. These are spiritual techniques that I often used when I was young. You can use them as you wish. I also know that your perception is extremely high, and I believe that you will be able to cultivate it very quickly. That is why I am giving it to you now. With these, there is no possibility of your identity being exposed. In addition, it will be difficult for you to secure the position of supervisor by yourself. Wu Xiang took out a blood-red token and said, of course, the Blood Cloak Pavilion won't just throw you into the Dark Thunder Guard. Your only mission in the Dark Thunder Guard is to climb up by hook or by crook. The higher you climb, the better. Yu Ruifeng gave you the position of supervisor, which is also a great opportunity for you. You must remember that you are not fighting alone. The Blood Cloak Pavilion is your backing. With this silver-striped blood kill token, you can mobilize anyone under the golden-striped blood cloak assassin in the Western Desolate Province. You can also mobilize the entire intelligence network in the Western Desolate Province. Hiss. Hearing this, Lin Shiqi couldn't help but inwardly take in a cold breath. With this token, he could mobilize any Spirit Aperture Realm assassin as well as a huge intelligence network. This was a great power. In the Western Desolate Province, his power was probably second only to the head of the pavilion. However, Lin Shiqi also knew that the Blood Cloak Pavilion gave him such great power, and he also had a great responsibility. Although Wu Xiang didn't say what the Blood Seed plan was, Lin Shiqi could guess that the Blood Cloak Pavilion wanted him to climb up to the position of Dark Thunder Guard commander. Not only him, there was also Delta Origi, Yushu, and Xiong Ming. Sooner or later, the three of them would be arranged into different forces. With the secret support of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, they could quickly rise up to the top. In the future, the four of them would very likely be in charge of a powerful force. At that time, they would have the opportunity to help the Blood Cloak Pavilion break the deadlock and soar to the top. This was the Blood Seed plan. You are a smart person. This is all I have to say. As for where you can climb in the future, it will depend on your own ability. Wu Xiang then removed the isolation restriction and went back to his room to rest. Lin Shiqi also went back to his room. The first thing he did was to use his unlimited skill points to learn all the cultivation methods and spiritual skills. And all of them were cultivated to the great perfection realm. With so many spiritual skills, not only did Lin Shiqi's combat power increase, but it also gave him more possibilities to fuse spiritual skills. Then, he began to plan in his mind how he could secure his position as a supervisor. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. Not only Lin Shiqi, but in Lanqi City, hundreds of miles away, there were also 4 people who could not sleep. They were sitting in a circle with gloomy expressions. The atmosphere was very solemn. They were the Dark Lightning envoys of the West Desolate Province's North County. They were all in the spiritual pulse realm. Among them, the one with the highest cultivation was a gray-haired old man in his 60s or 70s. He was in the 8th level of the spiritual pulse realm. The 2 people sitting on his left and right were in the middle stage of the spiritual pulse realm. Opposite him was an early-stage spiritual pulse realm cultivator. You all know the news from the West Desolate Province's headquarters, right? The old man's voice was a bit harsh. The other 3 nodded in agreement. Every branch of the Dark Thunder Guard had a sound transmission array, which was used to transmit information quickly. Not long ago, they all knew that a new supervisor would be appointed in a few days. The person on the right of the old man said, "Brother Gongsun Bing, could it be that the headquarters sent the wrong news?" Gongsun Bing said in annoyance, "How can the news from the great supervisor be fake?" "Qiu Cheng, are you questioning the great supervisor?" Qiu Cheng was inexplicably rebuked and did not say anything. The tall and sturdy man opposite him said, "Brother Gongsun, why did the higher-ups send us a spiritual pulse realm middle-stage supervisor? Even if Lanqi City is very remote, this is too perfunctory. If a spiritual pulse realm cultivator can be a supervisor, Brother Gongsun, you are the most suitable." Finally, the early-stage spiritual pulse realm cultivator said, "Brother Pang Yuan is right." Sigh. Gongsun Bing sighed deeply and said, "I specially paid a high price to use a sound transmission array to contact a good friend in the West Desolate Province's headquarters. Only then did I know that the new supervisor was personally appointed by the patrol inspector Yu. It is said that someone used their connections to send him in. So he went in through the back door." The others immediately showed disdainful expressions. Chapter 304. Most of the people in the Dark Lightning Guards were selected and trained when they were young. Those who were able to stand out from the rest were those who had worked hard for themselves. Take Gong Sun Bing for example. He had been in the Dark Lightning Guards for more than 30 years. He was very senior and had high prestige. He was quite famous around Mist City. But he was still a Dark Lightning envoy and not a supervisor. It was because his cultivation was not high enough. This was the rule of the Dark Lightning Guards, so he had nothing to say. But now, there was someone whose cultivation was lower than his, who had no foundation or qualifications, to be the supervisor, his superior. This made him feel very unconvinced in his heart. Especially since the previous supervisor had died in an accident during a mission and the headquarters hadn't sent a new supervisor yet. The cities around Mist City were all under his jurisdiction. He could be considered to have experienced the power of a supervisor, and even sought a lot of personal benefits from it. But now, he had to hand over all these rights to someone who was far inferior to him. Thus, he had other thoughts. Gong Sun Bing looked at the other three and said, Lu Xingji will be taking over in a few days. What do you all plan to do? What do we do? Qiu Qing said, what else can we do? Just do what we usually do. But when he spoke, his eyes darted around, not daring to look directly at Gong Sun Bing. Gong Sun Bing sneered and said, Qiu Qing, you're right. Then, are you going to keep those resources that you keep for yourself? Qiu Qing's expression changed instantly. Gong Sun Bing continued, you want to hide this little trick from my eyes? I'm just taking into account that you're a senior and have worked hard even if you didn't make any contributions. It's fine to take some small advantages. What I'm more curious about is whether the new supervisor will mind it or not. Qiu Qing's expression changed again and again. He immediately put on a smile and said, hey, what new supervisor? This little brother will definitely support brother Gong Sunday. He could tell that Gong Sun Bing didn't seem to want to hand over his power. He wanted to make this new supervisor a mere figurehead. Qiu Qing felt that since Lu Xingji could become the supervisor, this person might not have any ability, but he definitely had a background. He didn't want to offend him. But now that Gong Sun Bing had something on him, it was no longer up to him. One of the duties of the Dark Thunder Guards was to monitor corruption. His actions had also violated a great taboo. If he was exposed, he would be severely punished. He might even lose his cultivation and be expelled from the Dark Thunder Guards. Gong Sun Bing nodded satisfactorily. Among the 4 Dark Lightning envoys, Peng Yuan had always been his follower. As for Qiao Qian, who had just become a Dark Lightning envoy, he had never placed him in his eyes. Qiu Qing was the only one he couldn't control. Now that he had tied him to the same boat, he didn't have any worries. Then he said, that's good. Let's make arrangements for the next few days and prepare to welcome the new supervisor. 5 days later, there were 70 to 80 people gathered in front of the Dark Thunder Manor. They were all Dark Thunder Guards who were in charge of monitoring the surrounding cities. These people were usually scattered to carry out all kinds of missions. Today, they were gathered here to welcome the new supervisor. Not long after, Ling Shiqi arrived in front of the Dark Thunder Manor in Mist Chi City wearing a black robe embroidered with thunder patterns. Everyone saw the fire pattern on his shoulder, which was the sign of a supervisor. They knew that he was the new supervisor. Gong Sun Bing led everyone to welcome him and said in unison, greetings, supervisor. This was the first time Ling Shiqi saw Gong Sun Bing and the others. He immediately sensed their cultivation. He was quite curious as to how they knew he would enter the city today. Ling Shiqi took out his transfer order and said to Gong Sun Bing, who was standing at the front, this is the transfer order. You can take a look. Gong Sun Bing smiled and said, you must be joking. How can the transfer order be fake? Your humble servant Gong Sun Bing greets you. The 3 people behind him also cupped their fists and said, your humble servant Qiu Cheng. Peng Yuan. Qiao Qian. Even the dozens of Dark Thunder Guards behind him said in unison, greetings, supervisor. Ling Shiqi said indifferently, you don't have to be so polite. Gong Sun Bing saw Ling Shiqi's indifferent appearance and couldn't figure out his temperament. However, this didn't change his plan. He seemed to be relieved and said, Lan Chi City finally welcomes a supervisor. With a spirit aperture realm expert in charge, many things will be much easier. Gong Sun Bing immediately used Ling Shiqi's cultivation to make an issue out of it. Ling Shiqi's cultivation was at the 5th level of the spirit pulse realm. It was a joke for him to be a supervisor at this level. He specially gathered all the Dark Thunder Guards nearby just to see Ling Shiqi make a fool of himself. In his opinion, Ling Shiqi's cultivation couldn't be faked. The spirit pulse realm was the spirit pulse realm. He had to admit this point. Once Ling Shiqi revealed his cultivation, the Dark Thunder Guards would definitely be in an uproar. As the new supervisor, he would instantly lose all his prestige. Ling Shiqi looked coldly at Gong Sun Bing. He knew that the other party was trying to intimidate him. Normal Dark Thunder Guards didn't know about the supervisor's transfer, but Gong Sun Bing and the other 4 Dark Thunder Guards definitely knew about it in advance. Now that Gong Sun Bing mentioned Ling Shiqi's cultivation, his purpose was obvious. Ling Shiqi only said one word, oh. Oh. What oh? Gong Sun Bing was stunned. What kind of answer was this? In his expectations, Ling Shiqi might fly into a rage in front of everyone, or he might feel ashamed, or he might just remain silent. However, he didn't expect to get an oh. Ling Shiqi said again, won't you let me in? Gong Sun Bing shivered and hurriedly said, this humble one has been rude. Sir, this way please. The 5 of them came to the conference hall. As for the others, they dispersed. Ling Shiqi sat on the main seat and said, you are all Dark Thunder Guards of Mist City's Dark Thunder Manor. You have worked hard and have a lot of experience. I'm new here, so I don't know much about the Dark Lightning Guards and Misty Chi City. Therefore, I'll still need your guidance in the future. When Qiu Qing heard this, he felt that this new supervisor didn't seem like a difficult person to get along with. He thought to himself, maybe he knows that his cultivation isn't high, so he doesn't dare to be overbearing. Among the 4 of them, only the youngest, Qiao Qian, nodded in response to Ling Shiqi. Gong Sun Bing then said, Sir, what are you saying? We don't dare to give guidance. If you have anything to say, just tell us. Okay, then is there anything around Mist City that requires my attention recently? Gong Sun Bing shook his head and said, Sir, everything has been calm recently. There's nothing that requires your attention. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi sneered in his heart. Chapter 305. Ling Shiqi was not unprepared before coming here and on the way here. Although Lan Chi City was located in the north of the West Wilderness Prefecture, it was much more remote compared to the West Wilderness City. However, there were several trade routes that connected to the 6 nations of the West Wilderness near Lan Chi City. Therefore, people from various nations came and went in the cities around Lan Chi City, making it easy for spies to sneak in and cause trouble. Moreover, it had been more than half a month since the previous supervisor of Lan Chi City died in the line of duty. There should be a lot of things piled up in the Dark Thunder Guard. Yet, Gong Sun Bing said that there was nothing for him to deal with. This wasn't just a show of strength, but a figurehead. Are you sure there's nothing at all? Ling Shiqi asked again. Gong Sun Bing nodded with certainty. Ling Shiqi looked at the other 3 and saw that they had the same reaction. Huh, Ling Shiqi laughed, that's good. Looks like I'll have an easy time in the future. It's our duty to share your worries, Lord, Gong Sun Bing said with a meaningful tone. Ling Shiqi said, all right, I'm a little tired from the journey. You guys can leave first. Seeing Ling Shiqi's attitude, Gong Sun Bing secretly smiled and left with the other 3. This ending was within Gong Sun Bing's expectations. As a Spirit Pulse Realm supervisor, Ling Shiqi didn't have the strength, experience, or prestige. He really didn't know whether to turn hostile or not. In the end, he could only remain silent. From today onwards, he, Gong Sun Bing, would be the supervisor of the several cities around Lan Chi City. After walking out of the conference hall, Peng Yuan immediately said excitedly, Big brother Gong Sun, from today onwards, you're in charge of Lan Chi City's Dark Thunder Manor. Gong Sun Bing smiled. You can't say that. After all, we still have to listen to the supervisor. Ha 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 ha. As for Ling Shiqi, he sat on the main seat with a cold expression on his face, and he sat there for half a day. It wasn't until evening that he went to the supervisor's courtyard and immediately summoned Gong Sun Bing. When Gong Sun Bing received the summons, he was a little confused. He didn't know what Ling Shiqi wanted to do. However, he was full of confidence. Now that the entire Dark Thunder Manor belonged to him, what was there to be afraid of? I would like to see what kind of tricks this Lu Xingji can play. Not long after, Gong Sun Bing walked into Ling Shiqi's study and saw Ling Shiqi playing with a dagger. The dagger flashed with cold light from time to time. Gong Sun Bing smiled inwardly. This supervisor was so idle. He cupped his hands and said, Lord Lu, may I know why you called this lowly one? Ling Shiqi put down the dagger after a few breaths, as if he had just noticed Gong Sun Bing's arrival. He said, Nothing, I just have a small favor to ask of you. Sir, what are your orders? Gong Sun Bing was also very confused. He didn't know what Ling Shiqi was planning. Ling Shiqi picked up a letter on the table and said, This letter, I'll have to trouble you to personally deliver it to Lord Yu. Deliver a letter? Gong Sun Bing was naturally unhappy. Delivering a letter was such a small thing for an experienced Dark Thunder envoy to do. However, he couldn't refuse immediately. Because this letter was for Yu Ruifeng. This was the boss of all the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Desolate Prefecture. An ordinary Dark Thunder Guard might not even see this supervisor in their lifetime. If he could see Yu Ruifeng and leave a good impression, he would benefit a lot. To be honest, he really wanted to go. However, on second thought, Ling Shiqi was personally appointed by Yu Ruifeng. This meant that their relationship wasn't shallow. Today, he had just shown his power to Ling Shiqi, and now he was going to deliver a letter? The reason why he dared to make Ling Shiqi a figurehead was because his cultivation wasn't high, and because the emperor was far away here. The headquarters rarely cared about matters here. The contents of this letter wouldn't be a complaint against him, right? But then again, although Ling Shiqi was made a figurehead by them, he was still a supervisor on the surface. If he were to reject this matter, it would be equivalent to him being accused of disobeying his honor's order. To deliver or not to deliver? Gong Sun Bing hesitated. Ling Shiqi wasn't in a hurry. He played with the dagger again and waited patiently. After a while, Gong Sun Bing nodded and said, Since Sir has given the order, how could I dare to disobey? Being able to see Yu Ruifeng was an opportunity. He didn't want to give it up. This trip to the Western Desolate City, he could also carefully inquire about Ling Shiqi's background. As for the contents of the letter, he could change it however he wanted. There was no shortage of people in the Dark Thunder Guards who could imitate handwriting. Very good. This matter is very urgent. Pack up and set off. Now? Gong Sun Bing was slightly surprised. Ling Shiqi said with a serious face, The sooner the better. Thank you for your hard work. Okay, I will go and prepare. Gong Sun Bing turned and left. But what he didn't know was that Ling Shiqi looked at his back with a murderous look in his eyes. After Gong Sun Bing left Ling Shiqi's room, he didn't rush to set off. Instead, he called Qiu Cheng and the others over and told them about the letter. Qiu Cheng said, Brother Gong Sun, this Lu Xingji wants to send you away. Gong Sun Bing sneered and said, How can I not see through such a small trick? If I'm not wrong, Lu Xingji will definitely contact you tomorrow. Remember, there is no room for negotiation between us. You should all know what to do. Gong Sun Bing glanced at the three people, and finally his eyes fell on Qiu Cheng. Qiu Cheng immediately said, Brother Gong Sun, don't worry. Since we are all in the same boat, I know what to do. Gong Sun Bing continued, I will set off as soon as possible. I will be back in 7 or 8 days. Just pretend that he doesn't exist for the next few days. After that, he quickly left the city with a trusted aide. This trusted aide was someone who was good at imitating other people's handwriting. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in Leng Shiqi's room. Leng Shiqi was very calm. He said, "Thousand Face? Western Baron State Branch, black-striped blood-clothed assassin Thousand Face. Greetings, sir." The person who came was a black-striped blood-clothed assassin. Thousand Face was the helper that Leng Shiqi transferred from the Western Baron State Branch. But he was still on a mission and just arrived. Leng Shiqi stood up straight and said, "You came at the right time. Imitate me." Pink ripples of light appeared around Thousand Face, and immediately after, an identical Leng Shiqi appeared. Leng Shiqi circled Thousand Face twice and exclaimed, "Wonderful. Even I almost couldn't see through it. There are still flaws. Thousand Face is not good enough. Please forgive me, sir." Leng Shiqi ordered, "This is enough. Tonight, you will replace me here. If things go well, I will be back tomorrow morning." Thousand Face obeys. Then Leng Shiqi's body sank into the ground. Tonight, he was going to kill someone. Chapter 306. The moonlight tonight was very beautiful. Under the moonlight, 2 horses were galloping on the official road. The 2 people on the horses were Gong Sun Bing and his trusted aide, Hang Su. If a spirit pulse realm cultivator were to run at full speed, their speed would not be slower than a horse. However, galloping for such a long distance was naturally not possible. At this moment, Gong Sun Bing stopped his horse. "Hang Su, let's sleep nearby tonight and rest for a few hours." "Yes, Lord Gongsun." Hang Su led the horse to the side and began to prepare the things for the camp as if she was familiar with it. For the Dark Thunder Guards, sleeping in the wilderness at night was very normal. They were already used to it. Soon, Hang Su set up a simple tent and said, "Lord Gongsun, you rest first. I'll keep watch." Gongsun Bing had a lot on his mind and didn't chat with Hang Su. He nodded and sat down in the tent. At this moment, he had a faint feeling that something was wrong. Everything was going too smoothly. It was true that he intended to make the new supervisor a figurehead, but in his original plan, this was something that would be done slowly, like peeling silk from a cocoon. However, Leng Shiqi's attitude today was as if he had given up. At first, Gong Sun Bing felt that Leng Shiqi was too young. However, the fact that Leng Shiqi had asked him to deliver the letter showed that Leng Shiqi still had some shrewdness. Thinking about the letter, Gong Sun Bing took out the letter Leng Shiqi gave him from his mustard seed bag. He didn't hesitate to open the letter. There wasn't much content in the letter, so Gong Sun Bing quickly finished reading it. He let out a cold snort. As I expected, it really is a letter of complaint. To use such childish methods, it's really childish. After reading the letter, the worry in Gong Sun Bing's heart dissipated. It turned out that the new supervisor, Lu Xingji, didn't have any real ability. He carefully thought about it for a while and felt that there wouldn't be any problems even if he left for a few days, so he began to cultivate. Hang Su had been patrolling the surroundings. Woo! After an unknown period of time, Hang Su suddenly heard a faint sobbing sound in her ears. Even though he was at the spirit transformation realm, his heart trembled when he heard this sound in the middle of the night in the wilderness. He immediately looked around vigilantly, but there was no one in his field of vision. Did I hear wrongly? However, just as he was doubting himself, the sobbing sound appeared again, and it was right next to his ear. Hang Su instantly turned around, but there was still no one behind him. However, the fact that there was no one there made Hang Su turn pale with fright. Because Gong Sun Bing was also gone. Hang Su was dumbfounded. Gong Sun Bing was less than 10 zhang away from him, and there was even a simple tent set up by him. However, at this time, his surroundings were desolate. There was nothing. All he did was turn around. What was going on? At this moment, he suddenly felt an extreme chill, as if the vitality in his body was rapidly disappearing. Hang Su opened his mouth and wanted to cry for help, but unfortunately, he didn't even have the strength to make a sound. Meanwhile, Gong Sun Bing suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at Hang Su, who was standing not far away, and then glanced around, but he didn't find anything abnormal. Huh. That's strange. I clearly sensed a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation just now. How did it disappear all of a sudden? Gong Sun Bing murmured. As a veteran of the Dark Thunder Guards, he wasn't a fool. He was very good at capturing spirit force and sensing danger. Hang Su. Gong Sun Bing called out his name. Lord Gong Sun, what are your orders? Hang Su replied, but his body didn't move. Gong Sun Bing said, nothing. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. It stood to reason that if he called Hang Su would definitely come over. What's more, although it was Hang Su's voice, the direction it came from was a bit off. Just at this moment, a huge wave of spiritual energy appeared beneath him. Immediately, cold air and hot waves of fire intertwined and gushed out from the ground, directly swallowing Gong Sun Bing. A demon-like figure suddenly appeared. It was Ling Shiqi, who was wearing the demonic beast blood rune armor. Being affected by this side, Hang Su's body was also shaken to the ground. At this moment, he was already dead. To deal with such a spirit transformation realm cultivator, Ling Shiqi only used illusions to silently take his life. Although Gong Sun Bing was aware of the danger, he didn't expect that the person who ambushed him was actually a spirit caster. Under the sweeping of the ice and fire tornado, everything within a radius of 20 to 30 feet was destroyed. Some places on the ground were charred black, while others were covered in a layer of ice crystals. Gong Sun Bing's hands were flying around, each palm containing the power of Vajra Mountain, blocking the power of ice and fire. Ling Shiqi didn't expect to kill an 8th-level Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator in one move. He opened his 10 fingers and 10 bloodlines shot out. Each bloodline condensed blood chi and aimed at Gong Sun Bing's vital points. Gong Sun Bing's expression couldn't help but change. However, what shocked him even more was that the person who was standing in front of him just now had disappeared. But now that he was surrounded by the power of ice and fire, and there were 10 blood-red fingers shooting towards him, he didn't have the spare energy to look for his opponent. Gong Sun Bing suddenly clasped his hands together and a thick golden light appeared. The golden light immediately forced back all the ice and fire power. He slammed his palms down and the golden light condensed into a huge palm that slammed down, directly shattering all the bloodlines. However, Gong Sun Bing wasn't happy at all. He knew that the most dangerous thing had yet to appear. He hurriedly turned around and formed a seal with his hands. Layers of golden light protected his body. However, there was still no one around him. Who is this expert? Are you willing to show yourself? He couldn't help but feel a little anxious. He had to maintain the seal and it consumed a large amount of spirit energy every second. If this dragged on, he would be the one to die first. Since you don't want to meet me, I will take my leave first. Gong Sun Bing decided to leave. This place was very close to Mist Chi City. As long as he was near the city, he would be safe. However, he didn't understand who would come to assassinate him. There were very few people who knew that he had left the city. At this moment, a voice answered him, "Have a safe journey." Gong Sun Bing was shocked when he heard these words. He wasn't surprised by the meaning of these words, but because the owner of this voice was actually Lu Xingji. Immediately, a cold blade aura appeared in front of his eyes. It was as if there was only this blade aura in this world. The blade aura flashed and instantly tore apart the golden light around him. After that, he saw a headless corpse. It was his own body. Chapter 307. Early the next morning, a servant knocked on Ling Shiqi's door. He was here to deliver breakfast to Ling Shiqi. This person kept his head down the moment he entered the room. He planned to leave after placing the breakfast on the table, but before he left, he secretly glanced at Ling Shiqi. He thought to himself, I heard that this new supervisor's authority is about to be taken away. Looking at his tired face, he probably didn't sleep at all last night. Just as he was about to leave the room, Ling Shiqi's voice was heard, "Stop." That person's body immediately stiffened. He asked in a low voice, "Sir, do you have any other orders? You're also a Dark Thunder Guard?" Ling Shiqi's tone was very indifferent. It sounded like he wasn't in a good mood. No, this lowly one's cultivation is low. I'm only qualified to become a Dark Thunder Guard. Ling Shiqi saw that he was indeed only at the pure spirit realm. No wonder he was doing the work of a servant. He asked, "What's your name? How long have you been here?" "This lowly one is Wei Guan. I've been in Dark Thunder Manor for 2 years. Wei Guan, you've been here for quite some time. Let me ask you a few questions." Wei Guan was shocked when he heard this. He was young and his cultivation wasn't high, but he had to go through many rounds of selection to become a reserve member of the Dark Thunder Guard. He immediately guessed that Ling Shiqi might ask him about Dark Thunder Manor. Wei Guan lowered his head so low that it almost touched the ground. "Sir, this lowly one is only a servant. I don't know much about the manor." Ling Shiqi's tone was clearly a little angry. "I haven't even asked and you're already saying you don't know. What, even you don't put this supervisor in your eyes?" Wei Guan trembled and knelt on the ground. This lowly one doesn't dare. Even if this new supervisor didn't have any ability and had his authority taken away by Gong Sunbing and the others, he was still a supervisor. In Misty Chi City, he was his immediate superior. Wei Guan was also in a difficult situation. How did he get involved in the fight between the people above? If he didn't answer the invigilator's question today and was killed, he wouldn't be able to reason with anyone. If he answered and Gong Sunbing and the others found out about it, he would still be in trouble. Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed as he asked, "What's the relationship between Gong Sunbing, Peng Yuan, Qiu Cheng, and Xiao Qian?" Hearing Ling Shiqi's question, Wei Guan let out a sigh of relief. This wasn't a secret, and almost everyone knew about it. He said, "Gong Sunbing is the most senior Dark Thunder envoy in the Dark Thunder Manor in the Mist Chi City. He has been here for about 20 years. Even the previous supervisor isn't as senior as him. Therefore, his prestige here was very high. He also had many trusted aides in the Dark Thunder Guards, including Peng Yuan, who had been groomed and promoted by him." Peng Yuan's temper was more straightforward, but he was also very straightforward. Qiu Qing could be considered a veteran, but his reputation among the Dark Thunder Guards wasn't very good, mainly because he was a little selfish. He actually disliked Peng Yuan. The two of them would occasionally exchange a few words, but there had never been any conflict between them. As for Xiao Qian, he only became a Dark Thunder envoy after breaking through to the Spirit Pulse realm half a year ago. He's the most junior and usually keeps a low profile. He's kind to people, even to servants like us. Speaking of this, Wei Guan looked up at Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi waved his hand and said, "You may leave." Wei Guan immediately wanted to leave as if he had been pardoned, but Ling Shiqi said, "Tell Peng Yuan and the others to meet me in the meeting hall." Wei Guan's heart tightened. He had just finished talking about the Dark Thunder envoys. Why did Ling Shiqi want to rush them? However, this wasn't something he could worry about, so he immediately nodded and left. After a while, Ling Shiqi sat on the main seat in the meeting hall. His right hand's fingers casually tapped the armrest, making ta-ta sounds. Peng Yuan and the others sitting below had different expressions. Peng Yuan had an impatient expression. Qiu Cheng's eyes flashed. Last night, he had guessed that Ling Shiqi would find them today. Now, it had come true. However, what he did not understand was that Ling Shiqi had called them here without saying a word. What did this mean? Xiao Qian sat expressionlessly. Just like that, another hour passed. Ling Shiqi was still tapping the armrest. When the sound reached Peng Yuan's ears, it made him even more annoyed. He was not someone who could sit down. At this time, he finally could not help but ask. "Lord Supervisor, what is the matter with you? If there is nothing else, this lowly subordinate will leave first." Ling Shiqi glanced at him and said coolly, "This supervisor hasn't even spoken yet. When is it your turn to speak?" "You." Peng Yuan immediately became angry. He stood up, but he suddenly remembered that Gong Sun Bing had said before leaving to pretend Ling Shiqi did not exist. Pang Yuan swallowed back the words in his mouth. Unexpectedly, Ling Shiqi murmured, "It's just a dog of Gong Sun Bing." "Lu, what did you say?" Pang Yuan's anger that he had just suppressed exploded in an instant. He pointed at Ling Shiqi's nose and shouted angrily. When Qiu Qing saw this, he secretly knew that things were bad. He could tell that Ling Shiqi was deliberately targeting Pang Yuan today. Now that Pang Yuan had taken the bait, what would Ling Shiqi do? However, to everyone's surprise, Ling Shiqi laughed. Pang Yuan could not help but be taken aback. His expression became even uglier. "What are you laughing at?" Ling Shiqi did not answer him. What answered him was a huge devil flame palm. The 6-yang poisonous fire palm slammed out. The violent palm wind instantly overturned all the tables and chairs in the room. The raging devil flame spread out waves of heat, making people feel as if they had fallen into a fiery hell. How could Pang Yuan expect Ling Shiqi to suddenly attack him? In a hurry, he only had time to pull out a spirit saber. His saber aura was like a turbulent wave. The saber aura that appeared suddenly had a terrifying power. However, before he could slash out with his saber, the 6-yang poisonous fire palm had already arrived. Pang Yuan's cultivation was similar to Ling Shiqi's. They were both at the 5th level of the spirit pulse realm. However, Ling Shiqi had multiple high-level cultivation methods. His spiritual power was mutated and he had even opened 10 spirit pulses. Just his foundation alone was much stronger than Pang Yuan's. Under this palm, Pang Yuan was directly sent flying. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood in mid-air and slammed heavily onto the ground. There was a faint devil flame burning on his body and inside, causing his body to spasm. Ling Shiqi did not show mercy. He stretched out 4 fingers and 4 thunder-like finger forces shot out, leaving 4 bloody holes in Pang Yuan's limbs. Pang Yuan's head tilted and he completely fainted. Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian were both stunned. They were even more horrified. Ling Shiqi's instant explosion and crippled Pang Yuan, who was at the 5th level of the spirit pulse realm, in 2 moves shocked them greatly. You have no respect for your seniors and offended your superiors. You deserve it. Men, take him away. Chapter 308. As soon as Ling Shiqi finished speaking, 2 dark thunder guards carried Pang Yuan away to be treated. Then Ling Shiqi picked up a chair and sat down as if nothing had happened. Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian couldn't sit still. Ling Shiqi heavily injured Pang Yuan in a thunderous manner. This was a great lesson for Pang Yuan and also a warning to others. Qiu Qing originally thought that Ling Shiqi called them here to persuade them or give them some benefits to appease them. But he never expected Ling Shiqi to be so strong. Not just strong, but powerful. Qiu Qing finally understood why the higher-ups sent Ling Shiqi to be the supervisor. The strength he just displayed was comparable to the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. And he looked to be around 30 years old. This kind of person had a bright future. The Western Desert State Headquarters saw his potential. Qiu Qing vaguely felt that the situation was completely out of their control. And it had only been a day since they took over Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi sat on the chair and continued to knock on the armrest. He looked at Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian but his eyes were emotionless. Qiu Qing didn't know what to do but he knew that as long as he didn't go against Ling Shiqi had no reason to attack him. He had already prepared himself for a torrent of abuse, but Xiao Qian, who was by his side, did something that made him turn pale with fright. Xiao Qian walked forward and knelt on one knee. This lowly Xiao Qian is willing to follow the supervisor to the death. Gong Sun Bing thought highly of himself and looked down on everyone. He even violated the principle of the Dark Thunder Guards and took ill-gotten gains. These are the evidence that I have been collecting. Xiao Qian took out a small booklet and presented it with both hands. Ling Shiqi looked at Xiao Qian with interest. He picked up the booklet but didn't look at it and put it into his mustard seed bag. Since Qiao Qian had evidence of Gong Sun Bing's corruption, it wasn't something that could be collected in a day or two. Most likely, he had been preparing to use his army against Gong Sun Bing a long time ago. If Leng Shiqi was really just an incompetent supervisor, Qiao Qian would naturally stand on Gong Sun Bing's side. However, Leng Shiqi suddenly transferred Gong Sun Bing away last night and heavily injured Pang Yuan today. Clearly, he was preparing to seize power. Why did the four of them dare to make Leng Shiqi a figurehead? Firstly, he had no foundation and no experience. Secondly, his cultivation was not high. If Gong Sun Bing, who was in the late stage of the spirit pulse realm, could suppress him, how could he be willing to be under Leng Shiqi? But now that Leng Shiqi has shown his strength, things are completely different. Qiao Qian immediately chose a new team and took out the evidence to prove his loyalty. Leng Shiqi said with satisfaction, "Very good, get up." "Yes." Qiao Qian stood up and stood behind Leng Shiqi. Qiao Cheng's mind went blank. Everything was fine yesterday, the four of them worked together to make the new supervisor a figurehead. But at night, Gong Sun Bing was transferred away, Pang Yuan was heavily injured, Qiao Qian betrayed them, and now he was all alone. His cultivation was only in the 6th stage of the spirit pulse realm, not much stronger than Pang Yuan. He knew that he was no match for Leng Shiqi. In terms of status, Leng Shiqi was one level higher than him. What should he do now? What could he do? Qiao Cheng, Leng Shiqi's voice entered his ears and made him stop thinking. Qiao Cheng said, "I'm here." "Do you know about what Gong Sun Bing did?" "I don't know." "Okay, you can go back now." Qiao Cheng, "Go back? You're letting me go just like that?" Qiao Cheng couldn't believe his ears. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and said, "What, you want me to take care of your food?" Qiao Cheng immediately bowed and left. Then he wiped the cold sweat off his face. Everything that happened today was too strange. It was completely out of his expectations. He didn't expect anything at all. Pang Yuan's heavy injury, Qiao Qian's betrayal. But he still didn't understand why Leng Shiqi let him go so easily. In the meeting hall, Leng Shiqi said, "Qiao Qian, tell me, why did I let Qiao Cheng go?" Qiao Qian thought for a moment and said, "I'm just guessing. First, Qiao Cheng has always been careful with his words and actions. It's hard for him to find a chance to act. Second, you want him to contact Gong Sun Bing as soon as possible so that he can be convicted of corruption." Leng Shiqi smiled and said, "You're only half right. Qiao Cheng still has a trace of hope in his heart, and so does Pang Yuan. Their hope is Gong Sun Bing. As long as Gong Sun Bing comes back, they still have a chance to turn the tables. What I want to do is let them wait for hope." With that, Leng Shiqi got up and left. Only Qiao Qian was left in deep thought. He was thinking carefully about the meaning of Leng Shiqi's words. Finally, he thought of a possibility. That was, Gong Sun Bing might not be able to come back. If his guess was right, then this new supervisor was a little too scary. He couldn't help but be glad that he made the right choice. Qiao Qian shouted, "Men, tidy up this place. Prepare the best things, especially the supervisor's seat. Get him a decent one." Dark Thunder Manor wasn't peaceful today. How could such a big commotion be kept under wraps in the meeting hall? The news of Pang Yuan being crippled by Leng Shiqi in 2 moves quickly spread throughout Dark Thunder Manor. Everyone in this small place was in a state of panic. At night, Pang Yuan could only lie on his bed because his limbs were crippled. 2 servants helped him apply medicine before being chased away by Pang Yuan. Even though Pang Yuan couldn't move his body, he still cursed, "Lu Xingji, Lu Xingji. Let's see if you can still be so arrogant when Brother Gong Sun comes back. Is that so? Unfortunately, your brother Gong's son will probably never come back." A ghostly voice suddenly appeared. "Who?" Pang Yuan's eyes widened. He struggled to turn his body. To his horror, a figure had appeared in his room. This person was hidden in the darkness and his face couldn't be seen clearly. However, he recognized one of them from his voice and body shape. Pang Yuan gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Xingji." Immediately after, Pang Yuan only saw two five-colored lights suddenly light up in the darkness, and then he lost consciousness. He lost consciousness forever. Ling Shiqi walked to Pang Yuan's corpse and tore off his mustard seed bag to absorb his soul. At this moment, a figure strangely appeared beside Ling Shiqi. He was dressed in a blood-red robe. It was Thousand Face. Ling Shiqi said, "From today onwards, you are Pang Yuan." There was a flash of light and another Pang Yuan appeared. Even the wounds on his body were the same. Subordinate Pang Yuan greets the supervisor. Chapter 309. It had been 3 days since Ling Shiqi had seriously injured Pang Yuan. Qiu Cheng had felt like a year in these 3 days. Although Ling Shiqi had not come to find him again, this made him even more flustered. He could not guess what Ling Shiqi was going to do to him. At this time, a dark Thunder Guard confidant walked in and whispered something into his ear. Qiu Cheng's expression changed greatly. It's true. He still found it hard to believe what he had just heard. Sir, it's true. I wasn't the only one who saw it. Several people passing by saw it with their own eyes. It can't be false. Qiu Cheng's expression darkened. Then his eyes turned quickly and he decided to see with his own eyes. Soon, he came to the front of Ling Shiqi's room. However, he did not approach and looked from afar. After 2 incense sticks worth of time, Pang Yuan walked out as expected. Qiu Cheng's heart sank as he thought, Pang Yuan actually came to find Lu Xingji. What is he thinking? Then he saw Ling Shiqi personally send Pang Yuan out. The two were talking and laughing as though they were very close. Qiu Cheng was stunned. 3 days ago, Pang Yuan had been seriously injured by Ling Shiqi. Now that he could get out of bed, he came to find Ling Shiqi. But they were still talking and laughing? Qiu Cheng felt that the recent events were too strange. At this time, he faintly heard Pang Yuan mention his name. Because he was too far away and did not dare to use his spirit power to avoid being discovered, he could only vaguely hear the words, Qiu Cheng, weakness. However, these few words caused Qiu Cheng's entire body to turn cold. His entire body turned ice cold. Qiu Cheng roared in his heart, Pang Yuan also betrayed me. Not only did he betray Gong Sun Bing, he also gave out my weakness. Damn it, idiot. Qiu Cheng started to panic. If his weakness fell into the hands of the new supervisor, then he would be at the other's mercy. What do I do? What do I do? Qiu Cheng panicked. He could not help but move back and forth, almost scratching his head. Brother Qiu? A voice suddenly rang out. Qiu Cheng turned his head. When he saw that it was Qiao Qian, he straightened his posture and reined in his expression. Qiao Qian asked curiously, Brother Qiu, what are you doing here? Qiu Cheng coughed dryly. Nothing. Brother Qiu is also here to see the supervisor, right? Wasn't that Pang Yuan? Why had he come out of Lord Lu's room? Looks like they're having a good time. Could it be that Pang Yuan has also turned over to the light? Qiao Qian's words were like a stab to Qiu Cheng's heart. Even someone as scheming as Qiu Cheng couldn't control himself, and his expression turned even uglier. When Qiao Qian saw that Qiu Cheng didn't say anything, he sneered inwardly and walked past him. However, before he left, he said, Brother Qiu, a wise man submits to circumstances. Could it be that Brother Qiu wants to be like Pang Yuan, who only learned to repent after suffering? Qiu Cheng was really starting to waver, but there was still a sliver of hope in his heart. That hope was Gong Sun Bing. As long as Gong Sun Bing returned, there was still hope. After Ling Shiqi sent Pang Yuan away, he saw Qiao Qian walk over with a smile on his face. When the two entered the room, Ling Shiqi asked, how was Qiu Cheng's reaction? Qiao Qian replied, it was exactly as Milord predicted. He's already panicking and confused, and his heart is starting to waver. Actually, everything that happened today was just a show arranged by Ling Shiqi. Qiao Qian was also the one who told him about Qiu Cheng's personal gains. However, if it was Qiao Qian who said it, it would be far less shocking than if it was Pang Yuan who said it. Qiao Qian continued, "My lord, if you were to rope in Qiu Cheng now, I believe that there's at least a 70% chance of success." Ling Shiqi shook his head. "There's no hurry. Let me ask you something first. Does our Dark Thunder Manor have the right to recruit Dark Thunder Guards?" Qiao Qian didn't react for a moment. This topic had crossed too far. However, he immediately replied, "Yes, but my lord can only recruit 30 people at most. If you want more, you'll have to apply to Great Supervisor Duan Chun." Ling Shiqi nodded thoughtfully and asked, "You should know how many trusted aides Gong Sun Bing has, right?" When Qiao Qian heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have guessed what Ling Shiqi wanted to do. Gong Sun Bing has a lot of experience here. A third of the Dark Thunder Guards are his trusted aides. There are so many. Ling Shiqi was shocked, but at the same time, he understood. If it were him, he would also choose to make the new supervisor a mere figurehead. Ling Shiqi ordered, "Now, you're going to do two things. First, give me a list of all of Gong Sun Bing's trusted aides. Second, gather all of the Dark Thunder Guards and gather at Dark Thunder Manor the day after tomorrow." Qiao Qian took a deep breath. He knew that Ling Shiqi was going to get rid of his dissidents. However, since he was already on Ling Shiqi's side, he could only do as he was told. However, he was secretly very surprised by Ling Shiqi's methods. Let's not talk about others. Let's talk about Pang Yuan. Qiao Qian couldn't figure out how Ling Shiqi managed to rope him in. Now, he felt more and more that his choice was very wise. Time passed in the blink of an eye. After 2 days, all of the Dark Thunder Guards around Mist Chi City except for Gong Sun Bing had gathered. Ling Shiqi faced 70 to 80 Dark Thunder Guards with his hands behind his back. Behind him were Qiao Qian, Qiu Cheng, and Pang Yuan. Pang Yuan was actually 1,000 Faces messenger. These days, he rarely saw people with the excuse of recuperating. In fact, he was secretly working with Ling Shiqi to collect information on Pang Yuan's habits and behavior. At this point, as long as he didn't make a move, he wouldn't be exposed. Among the 3 Dark Thunder envoys, only Qiu Cheng was on tenterhooks. It had already been 5 days since Gong Sun Bing went to deliver the letter. According to the distance, he should have already reached West Desolated City and should be on his way back. However, when he secretly used the sound transmission formation to inquire, he was shocked to find that Gong Sun Bing hadn't been to West Desolated City at all. Then, where did he go? These days, he had been suffering in his heart. He even wanted to take the initiative to find Ling Shiqi and lay his cards on the table. However, Ling Shiqi turned a blind eye to him and treated him as if he didn't exist. Today, Ling Shiqi gathered all of the Dark Thunder Guards. He couldn't figure out what kind of medicine Ling Shiqi was selling in his gourd. Ling Shiqi looked at the Dark Thunder Guards and said in a clear voice, "This time, I've gathered all of you here for one thing. 2 days ago, I received a secret report that the evil bandit Mo Huaishou appeared in the vicinity of Ai Ming Mountain. This person has stolen countless things. It's our duty to get rid of this person. Unfortunately, this bandit's cultivation isn't weak and he's extremely cunning. Therefore, we need to gather all of our forces to ensure that we can kill this bandit. There's no time to lose. If we delay, there might be more changes. Let's set off now." Chapter 310. Great Bandit Mo Huaishou appearing at Ai Ming Mountain. Everyone was confused when they heard this. They had all heard of Great Bandit Mo Huaishou's name. He was indeed a heinous person who deserved to be killed. However, the Dark Lightning Guards had their own intelligence network. How could they not know that Mo Huaishou was at Ai Ming Mountain? Ai Ming Mountain was close to Misty Chi City. If he really showed himself there, the Dark Lightning Guards would definitely know. However, since this matter came from the supervisor's mouth, how could they dare to question it? The one who didn't believe this the most was Qiu Cheng. He was in charge of gathering intelligence and he didn't receive any news about Imohuesho. In other words, Ling Shiqi was lying. He purposely gathered everyone together and brought them out of the city. What was he trying to do? Qiu Cheng also faintly sensed a trace of danger. But now that he was alone, he could only silently follow Ling Shiqi out of Misty City and head straight for Ai Ming Mountain. The group of Dark Lightning Guards rushed to Ai Ming Mountain at their fastest speed and went up the mountain to search for traces of Mo Huisho. Not long after, they encountered a fork in the road. Ling Shiqi said, "Let's split up. Qiao Qian and Qiu Cheng go to the left. Pang Yuan and I will bring people to the right." Then, Pang Yuan pointed out more than 20 people. Coincidentally, these people were all Gongsun Bing's trusted aides. These people also realized this after they stood out, but they didn't suspect anything. This was because Pang Yuan was also Gongsun Bing's trusted aide. Since Gongsun Bing wasn't around, Pang Yuan could use these trusted aides. Ling Shiqi instructed, no matter which side meets Mo Huisho, immediately send out a signal. Don't fight head-on. This subordinate obeys. Then, the group split into two. Ling Shiqi and Pang Yuan led 20 to 30 people and walked towards the right mountain path. They walked until the afternoon, but it was still peaceful. Not to mention Great Bandit Mo Huisho, they didn't even see a shadow. At this moment, Ling Shiqi's body suddenly stopped. Pang Yuan went forward and asked, "Sir, what's wrong?" "There seems to be some movement up ahead, go take a look," Ling Shiqi said. Pang Yuan nodded. Then, he turned left and disappeared without a trace. The remaining 20 to 30 people were looking around. Suddenly, they saw gorgeous flower petals falling from the sky. Everyone saw different petals, but the petals they saw were the ones they thought were the most beautiful. Unknowingly, they were intoxicated by the beautiful world of flowers. They were completely unaware that Ling Shiqi had already unsheathed his inky jade sword, and a total of 54 demonic patterns were engraved on the blade. Then, over 100 invisible channel invading sword chi sprayed out and easily reaped their lives. Not only that, but even their remnant souls were absorbed by Ling Shiqi, becoming nutrients for his spiritual power and physical strength. After doing all this, Pang Yuan also returned. He didn't show any reaction when he saw the corpses all over the ground. This was all part of Ling Shiqi's plan. On the other side, Qiao Qian and Qiu Cheng were leading the other Dark Lightning Guards to search for Mo Huisho. However, Qiu Cheng's mind was not on this at all. He wasn't stupid. He watched as Ling Shiqi and Pang Yuan led Gong Sun Bing's men to the other side. What would they do? Qiu Cheng already had an answer in his heart, but he didn't dare to believe it. Chirp! At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the air from afar, interrupting his thoughts. Hearing this sound, everyone immediately turned around. Qiao Qian shouted, "Mo Huisho is over there, let's go help the inspectors." When Qiao Qian and Qiu Cheng rushed back to the fork in the road, they saw Ling Shiqi and Pang Yuan running over with injuries. Qiao Qian hurried over and asked, "Sir, are you all right?" Ling Shiqi sighed deeply and shook his head heavily. "I'm fine, but..." Qiao Qian looked behind Ling Shiqi and asked, "Sir, where are our brothers?" Ling Shiqi was instantly heartbroken. He revealed a regretful expression and remained silent. Pang Yuan continued, "Sigh, we were about to take down Mo Huisho, but I was too careless and allowed him to use his strongest trump card. Sir Lu was seriously injured in order to protect me, and the rest of our brothers were all wiped out. Completely wiped out." Everyone revealed a look of disbelief. That was 20 to 30 Dark Lightning Guards. Every one of them was an elite that had been carefully selected. They were all gone just like that? However, these words came from Dark Lightning Envoy Pang Yuan's mouth, and the two of them were indeed injured, so they had no choice but to believe it. Even if they didn't believe it, they wouldn't dare to say it. For example, Qiu Cheng. He didn't believe a single word that Pang Yuan said. This was obviously Pang Yuan secretly colluding with Leng Shiqi to eliminate his enemies. However, so what if he knew the truth? If he dared to say it, he would probably die in Mo Huaishou's hands soon. What made him even more fearful was that Leng Shiqi dared to kill even Gong Sun Bing's trusted aides. What did that mean? Something might have happened to Gong Sun Bing. Gong Sun Bing had been gone for a few days, and there was no news of him at all. However, Leng Shiqi was stirring up trouble in dark lightning manner, eliminating his enemies without any scruples. He suddenly understood that this time, Leng Shiqi wasn't just eliminating Gong Sun Bing's trusted aides, he was also killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Qiu Qing stood up and said, "Sir Lu, Mo Huaishou killed so many of our brothers. It's a heinous crime. I only regret that I didn't fight side by side with you to kill this evil thief." He even emphasized the words, "fight side by side." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi secretly smiled, knowing that everything was done. He patted Qiu Cheng's shoulder and said, "We will have many chances to kill enemies side by side in the future." Qiu Cheng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He had succeeded in defecting, and his life was saved. After everyone returned, Qiu Cheng took the initiative to confess that he had sought personal gain. What surprised him was that Leng Shiqi didn't care at all, and even acquiesced to his actions. Qiu Cheng realized that he was wrong from the start. He thought that if this was exposed, he would be severely punished, which was why he stood on Gong Sun Bing's side. In the end, Gong Sun Bing didn't care at all, and this made him regret. In Leng Shiqi's eyes, every man for himself. He wasn't afraid of his subordinates being greedy, nor was he afraid of their ambitions. In fact, the more someone was like this, the more he would use them. As long as they held their bottom line and didn't touch his reverse scale, he would turn a blind eye. After sending Qiu Qing away, Leng Shiqi called Xiao Qian and Pang Yuan over. He directly ordered, "Go prepare to recruit Dark Lightning Guards. This time, we will recruit 30. Xiao Qian was delighted. This kind of thing was given to him to do, which showed his trust in him. The recruitment went very smoothly, so smoothly that Xiao Qian was a little self-doubtful. Because in the past few days, there were often people with good cultivation and clean backgrounds who took the initiative to join the Dark Lightning Guards. Originally, he estimated that it would take about 10 days to complete the task, but it was completed in 3 days. At this moment, Leng Shiqi was flipping through the roster of the new Dark Lightning Guards, and nodded with satisfaction. Xiao Qian didn't know, but Pang Yuan did. These 30 Dark Lightning Guards were all black-clothed assassins from the Blood Garment Pavilion. Now, among these Dark Lightning Guards, Thousand-Face disguised as Pang Yuan to monitor Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian. 1/3 of the Dark Lightning Guards were from the Blood Garment Pavilion. Leng Shiqi's position as supervisor was temporarily stable. Chapter 311. On this day, Leng Shiqi sat on the main seat of the supervisor. Xiao Qian had replaced his chair with a chair carved out of jade. It was actually soft when he sat on it, and there was a warm current flowing through his body. Most importantly, the sound of his fingers tapping on it was exceptionally crisp and pleasant to the ears. Leng Shiqi murmured, "Xiao Qian is really considerate." Now, he finally experienced the treatment of a superior, which also proved that he was temporarily stable in this position. The reason why he said temporarily was because Leng Shiqi knew that there were actually many loopholes in everything he did previously. For example, where did Gong Sun Bing and Hang Su go? Were those 20 to 30 people really killed by Mo Huaishou? Mo Huaishou didn't seem to use a sword, and there were many capable people in the Dark Thunder Guards. It was completely possible to determine whether they died by Mo Huaishou's hands from the wounds on the bodies. Even whether Mo Huaishou appeared in the vicinity of Ai Ming Mountain was another matter. These things couldn't be investigated, and as long as someone investigated carefully, they would definitely find a lot of loopholes. But was this important? It wasn't important. The important thing was that Leng Shiqi was now completely in the supervisor's position. As long as he didn't investigate, who would dare to? Taking a step back, whether it was the Dark Thunder envoys or the Dark Thunder guards, there were people from the Blood Clothing Pavilion monitoring others. If there were really people secretly investigating these things, Ling Shiqi would know immediately. It was just that these things were more or less a hidden danger. But as time passed, he would be considered to be in the supervisor's seat after he had completely pacified all the Dark Thunder guards. Ling Shiqi picked up a small stack of files beside him. These were all accumulated in the past few days and were important matters for him to look through as the supervisor. These were basically information on whether there were any problems with a certain person or a certain family, and more than 90% of them were fine. Only a family called the Du family was seriously suspected of colluding with the spies of the 6 nations of the Western region. In Lanqi City, many families were intertwined and controlled more than half of the Lanqi City's business economy. There were a total of 9 clans in the entire Misty Qi City, and the strongest among them were the Du clan and the Jiang clan. Their clan heads were both at the late stage of the spiritual pulse stage. Ling Shiqi pondered for a while and decided not to touch the Du family for 3 reasons. Firstly, he still needed to nurture and stabilize his team. He still needed some time to slowly infiltrate them. Secondly, after all, the Dark Thunder guards did not have conclusive evidence in their hands. They were just suspicious. Thirdly, he also intended to go into seclusion for a period of time. Before coming to Misty City, Wu Xiang had given him 20 to 30 rank 3 spiritual skills, but he had been thinking of ways to get rid of his dissidents recently and hadn't had the time to try fusing them. Of course, before he went into seclusion, he had something very important to do. After that, Ling Shiqi came to a heavily guarded place in the Dark Thunder Manor, the treasury. The treasury contained all of Dark Thunder Manor's cultivation resources and resources accumulated over a long period of time. In the past, this place was personally managed by Gong Sun Bing. After he left, he gave the key to Pang Yuan, and now it was in Ling Shiqi's hands. Sir Invigilator. The 8 Dark Thunder guards in charge of guarding the treasury knelt on the ground and shouted respectfully. Ling Shiqi nodded and opened the door to the treasury. The treasury wasn't very big, only about 10 feet in radius, but there were many things inside. Ling Shiqi could imagine all kinds of cultivation resources. What surprised him the most was that it even included cultivation methods and spiritual skills. Although the highest level was only rank 3, there were still many of them. There were as many as 13 of them. In addition to what Wu Xiang gave him, it was equivalent to him having more than 30 spiritual skills. This made him even more determined to go into seclusion for a period of time. Without hesitation, he prepared to use his unlimited skill points to learn them. However, when he opened the system, he realized that there was something he was more interested in today's refreshed system store. Rank 2 Index Card, 200 System Coins. Ling Shiqi had used an index card before. This was something that could narrow down the range of the lottery. However, he had only used a rank 1 index card on Blood Mist Island. Now that a rank 2 index card had appeared in the system store, he wanted to buy it and try it out. However, when he saw that his system coins were a big 0, he smiled bitterly. After he came out of the illusory spirit's secret realm, he bought a reforge card to reforge the current inky jade sword. Then, he went through an unlimited lottery of 1,000 system coins and swallowed all of his system coins. Later, he went to save 9 leave and killed 3 disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor. He also killed 3 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators in the Southern God Peak and seized a lot of resources. However, those resources were all exchanged for spirit stones and then used to buy materials to help 9 Leave repair his body. 9 Leave's body had long been destroyed under the siege of the experts of the Extreme Fire Manor. Even though Ling Shiqi had paid such a huge price, he had only recovered about 70% to 80%. Speaking of 9 Leave, Ling Shiqi remembered that 9 Leave had been asleep for almost 4 months, but there were still no signs of him waking up. Next, Ling Shiqi took some materials and sold them to the system. In exchange for 200 system coins, he bought a rank 2 index card from the system store. After that, he also filled his pockets with 10 rank 3 spirit pills. Each pill was worth hundreds of spirit stones. Ordinary spirit pulse realm cultivators would need a long time to consume them. On Leng Shiqi's body, including the 30 pills that Wu Xiang gave him, he already had 40 pills. Leng Shiqi estimated that these rank 3 spirit pills would be enough for him to use until he reached the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. After taking 10 rank 3 spirit pills and some materials, Leng Shiqi did not take any more. As a supervisor, it was fine for him to fill his pockets with things. However, the resources here had to be distributed to his subordinates on time. If he used it recklessly, he might not even be able to pay his subordinates a month's salary. Thus, Leng Shiqi returned to his room and called Xiao Qian, Qiu Cheng, and Peng Yuan over. After the 3 of them arrived, Leng Shiqi said, "I called you guys over to talk about something. After this, I will be in closed-door cultivation for a while." Closed-door cultivation? Qiu Cheng and the others were stunned. Leng Shiqi had just stabilized his position as a supervisor and was about to go into closed-door cultivation. Was he not afraid of something happening? However, they did not say anything. Leng Shiqi ordered, "The affairs of Dark Thunder Manor will be handled by the 3 of you. Qiu Cheng, you were originally in charge of intelligence. You will still be in charge. Xiao Qian will be in charge of the affairs of the Dark Thunder Guards. Peng Yuan will be in charge of the handover of missions. I won't be in seclusion for long this time, and it won't be a life or death seclusion. If there's anything important, you can come and find me." The 3 of them said in unison. This subordinate obeys. For Qiu Cheng, he was already very happy to be in charge of intelligence. He originally thought that Leng Shiqi would suppress him for a while. For Xiao Qian, this was a secret promotion. Originally, he did not have much of a presence among the Dark Thunder envoys and did not have any real power. Now, he was in charge of the Dark Thunder Guards. On a smaller scale, he had to deal with the conflicts between them and give out monthly salaries. However, on a larger scale, this included the mobilization of the Dark Thunder Guards. This was not a small power. Missions were the foundation of the Dark Thunder Guards. Giving them to Peng Yuan in disguise, Leng Shiqi could go into closed-door cultivation in peace. Chapter 312. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. In the room, Leng Shiqi was cultivating with his eyes closed. His body was surrounded by a faint gray mist and 5-colored flowing light. His aura was deeper and more stable. His cultivation was already at the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. When he was at the Blood Clothing Pavilion, he had won the Pavilion Master Hateful Blade and was rewarded with the 9 Melody Spirit Fusion Pill. With the help of this pill, his cultivation had skyrocketed to the 5th level of the Spirit Vein realm and was close to the 6th level. Over the past half a month, with the help of several powerful and profound cultivation methods, his cultivation speed had increased by leaps and bounds. The key was that with these techniques, he could almost completely refine the 3rd turn spirit melting pill without leaving any medicinal dregs in his body. Therefore, he refined a 3rd turn spirit melting pill every other day and finally broke through to the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. But at this moment, there was an urgent knock on the door. Before Leng Shiqi went into seclusion, he said that unless there was an emergency, he was not to be disturbed. But now that someone was interrupting his seclusion, it meant that there was something that Peng Yuan and the other 2 couldn't solve. Leng Shiqi slowly stopped and opened his eyes. The strange thing was that his eyes were very turbid and looked a little sluggish. This was Leng Shiqi using the soul-splitting technique to separate half of his consciousness and immerse himself in the spirit illusion realm. However, that part of his consciousness wasn't refining mental power in the spirit illusion realm, but deducing spiritual techniques. In the past, if he wanted to fuse spiritual techniques, he had to continuously use them. But this way, he couldn't cultivate anymore. Moreover, he was now in the Dark Thunder Manor and there were many eyes. Even if he ordered people not to come close, it was inevitable that some of his information would be exposed. So he had a flash of inspiration and thought of using the soul-splitting technique to separate a part of his consciousness and deduce spiritual techniques in the spirit illusion realm. There were many benefits to this. First, he could cultivate spiritual power while deducing spiritual techniques. Also, he could avoid being spied on by others. Most importantly, if he was outside, he would have to stop to recover his spiritual power after a round of spiritual techniques. But in the spirit illusion realm, with the support of the Heaven Face Soul Crystal, he could almost continuously use spiritual techniques and fuse them. This saved him a lot of time. Furthermore, the process of fusing his spiritual skills was very smooth. In just half a month, he had fused 2 new unique skills. Furthermore, he had integrated the violent lion's raging forest fist into the ferocious tiger's wave-treading fist. It could be said that he had gained a lot. Unfortunately, he had urgent matters to attend to, so he had no choice but to stop. Ling Shiqi used the soul separation technique and withdrew the other part of his consciousness from the spiritual illusion world. His eyes gradually became clear. Then, he stretched his body and opened the door. What surprised him was that Xiao Qian, Peng Yuan, and Qiu Cheng were all standing at the door with anxious expressions on their faces. What could make the 3 dark lightning emissaries so anxious? When the 3 of them saw Ling Shiqi, they were also stunned. As Ling Shiqi had just finished cultivating, his aura had not been completely concealed. They could immediately sense that Ling Shiqi's aura was clearly at the 6th level of the spirit pulse realm. He only went into seclusion for half a month and broke through to the 6th level of the spirit pulse realm. Qiu Cheng was the most shocked because his cultivation was also at the 6th level of the spirit pulse realm. He clearly remembered that it took him 2 to 3 years to cultivate from the 5th level to the 6th level. Of course, he also knew that his cultivation talent was average, but Ling Shiqi's breakthrough speed was too shocking. On the other hand, Xiao Qian's reaction was not as exaggerated as Qiu Cheng's. He was only at the 1st level of the spirit pulse realm and had not experienced the hardships of cultivation. As for Peng Yuan, he was only slightly surprised. In his opinion, someone who could possess the silver-patterned blood kill token was definitely a giant among men. However, he still pretended to be shocked. Ling Shiqi did not think much of it. He said indifferently, "What's the hurry? Come in and talk." Qiu Cheng and the other 2 finally reacted and sat down. Qiu Cheng said anxiously, "Sir, actually, there's a secret in our Mist Chi City's Dark Lightning Manor that you might not know about." Let's hear it." Ling Shiqi looked at Qiu Cheng with interest. Qiu Cheng's face appeared to be in a difficult position. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Sir, you should know that although Mist Chi City is not big, it is still relatively wealthy because of the existence of the trade routes." Ling Shiqi naturally knew about this. Although Mist Chi City was far from Western Desolated City, there were still many foreign merchants coming and going. It was considered a relatively prosperous city. Qiu Cheng continued, "Because there are many merchants from the 6 kingdoms of the western regions, some people have other ideas. For example, secretly moving some things that are prohibited by the Thunderfire dynasty." Hearing this, a word appeared in Ling Shiqi's mind. Smuggling. Ling Shiqi's eyes moved slightly. Smuggling was a business with huge profits, but this kind of thing was under the jurisdiction of the Dark Lightning Guards. He looked at Qiu Cheng's troubled expression and felt that there was more to it than met the eye. In Mist Chi City, there are 9 long-established families that are doing this kind of business. At this point, Qiu Cheng couldn't help but glance at Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi's expression didn't look so good. He asked, "You mean to say that the Dark Lightning Guards know that these 9 families are smuggling, but do nothing about it?" Qiu Cheng hurriedly explained, "Sir, please listen to this subordinate's explanation. Actually, this matter was tacitly approved by the previous supervisor, Sir Shayu." Ling Shiqi's brows furrowed slightly. Was this related to the previous supervisor? Seeing that Ling Shiqi didn't continue to question him, Qiu Cheng continued, "Sir, you're new here, so you might not know that the monthly salary of the Dark Lightning Guards isn't high. Although the rewards for carrying out missions are quite high, no matter what the mission is, it's more complicated and full of danger. The previous supervisor, Sir Shayu, treated us extremely well, but the Dark Lightning Manor's own wealth couldn't support it. Thus, Sir Shayu thought of a way, which is to tacitly approve of the 9 families smuggling, but they have to hand over a tribute every month. Ling Shiqi finally understood. He felt that Sha Yu was quite daring. There were many people who could think of such a method, but there weren't many who dared to violate the Dark Lightning Guard's duties and do such a thing. Ling Shiqi then asked, "You've said so much. What exactly happened?" Qiu Qing said, "Sir, we agreed with the 9 families to hand over the tribute at the beginning of every month. But today, the tribute that the 9 families handed over was actually less than half of what they usually hand over." Ling Shiqi narrowed his eyes. He knew why. It was because the 9 families felt that a mid-stage Spirit Pulse Realm supervisor like him wasn't much of a threat to them. Unknowingly, 2 cold rays of light shot out from his eyes. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.